Hello, good morning, bonjour. I think maybe we should start because we are running late a bit. Only 40 minutes because we have some participant online. Sorry for the delay, but we had a long talk this morning and a long coffee break. So hopefully you did have your coffee break too. So we will start this meeting. So welcome to the session entitled Making the Case for Increased Investment in Mediterranean Marine Protected Areas. So I will facilitate this workshop with Martina Hervat for Brioni National Park, Croatia. And my name is Romain Renoux. I'm the Executive Director of the Med Fund. So I think that you all received the session agenda, or maybe I can go rapidly through it. I will introduce the session with few words also from Martina, and then we have some participant speakers online. Mr. Ahmed Abdallah, the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. We'll have speaker here with us in Montenegro, Timothy Cook from Blue Seeds. We also have with us Marno Milotic from Brioni National Park, also here with us. We'll have Notre Grand Bleu also and Flag Pine, two NGOs working with the Med Fund, one from Albania, the other one from Tunisia, here also with us today. And then we will learn also from 10 years of investment in marine protected areas from FFEM with Constance Corbier. She's here with us today. 25 years. Okay. You look so young. And then we should have also Pierre Carré, probably online because I didn't see him here. And we will discuss on the next steps and how can we convince government, private sectors, and financial partners to invest more in marine protected area management effectiveness. So I think that we might have a few slides to start with. I don't know where is the... Okay. Do you have the Zappet? This one? Yeah, it's okay. Okay, so yeah, so before we start, we share the screen with the participant online, just to make sure that we all understand the rule of this hybrid session. We have, as I said, participant online and participant here in the room in Montenegro. So you can use the button interpretation to choose the language you do prefer, English or French. And if you are in the room, I think there are some headsets at the back of the room. Please make sure that your full name appears in Zoom so that you have the name of your organization and your name so that you can maybe raise some question and we will read the question here. The session will be recorded and please mute your mic when you do not speak. And during the question and answer discussion, you are requested to raise hand using the reaction menu. You can provide also anytime during the conversation some inputs in the chat box, and when speaking online or from the floor, please start by stating your name, your organization, and country. So that's very important when we do like the minutes of this session. So we can move to the next slide. Okay, so we just mentioned that in the plenary session, that was just a definition of management effectiveness, which is quite a long sentence. So it is here. I leave it here for you for 1 minute. Because as you know, all this gathering of this regional workshop is about management effectiveness. So today we talk about increased investment in MPA to support management effectiveness. So just to make sure that we are completely aligned with this definition, Medpan has put this synthesis here. We can move maybe to the next one. I will introduce myself by introducing the Med Fund and why I'm here talking about investment in Mediterranean MPAs, because basically the Med Fund has been designed to support the management, the day-to-day management of marine protected areas across the Mediterranean region. Two countries took the leadership to create this organization. It is a Monaco-based organization. So Monaco, France, and Tunisia, they took the lead to design a custom-made organization. And we have to acknowledge that the idea came from you, from MPA managers, from Medpan Network, from the Prince Albert II of Monaco Foundation. They pushed this idea of having or designing a sustainable funding mechanism for marine protected areas across the Mediterranean region. So it took birth in Antalya, I think, in a forum that Sparak and Medpan organized in 2012. And we got support in the past years by the GEF, by the FFM, by the AFD to design a custom-made tool, but also to start funding marine protected areas across the Mediterranean region as pilot sites. And you can see in the next slide, Martina. Thank you. Yes, thanks. Yeah, just an overview of where we are now. So we are supporting now 15 marine protected areas across the Mediterranean region. So 3 MPA in Morocco, 5 in Tunisia, 1 soon in Lebanon, 2 in Turkey, 1 in Albania, 1 in Croatia, and also very soon, hopefully beginning of next year, 2 also from Montenegro. You've heard the minister this morning. We are pleased to support 2 MPA with the support of the GEF funding, Katic and Platamuni. So this is an overview and of what we are doing in the Med. And if you want to know more, you can join us on Friday. We will develop more about the support will be given to marine protected areas in the years to come. So if we move to the topic of the other subject, as you saw on the program, according to a Medpan survey, and we discussed about that this morning, Suzanne and Laurent Sourbès mentioned that 28% of marine protected areas in non-EU countries declare to work with an insufficient budget or with no budget at all. So that's quite a challenge, right? Working with no budget to manage a marine protected area. When you see all the mission you have to deliver from surveillance, scientific monitoring, good governance, support of eco-friendly economic activities, education, awareness. So how can we deal with all those activities without funding? That's one question we should raise today. So the first thing I want just to launch this this topic is, first is that true? Is there any MPA manager in the room that are feeling they have no budget to run their MPAs? Are you here, like, could you tell us how do you deal with that situation? And what should be the support the Medpan network and all the community of actors could support you? So who is running an MPA, managing an MPA with no money at all? Please, if you could talk in the mic. No, don't be shy. I mean, that's a reality. And to be obvious, we are very curious to know how you can handle this situation and how you manage, because civil society is always very creative, you know? So please share with us.
Ali Badruddin, PhD marine researcher. I am also the manager of Tir Coast Nature Reserve. It is an MPA in the south of Lebanon. With no budget at all, no, we have like some external projects that help us to deal with some activities. But yes, concerning internally in our country, we don't have any budget that help us to do the monitoring activity, especially what we are focusing on it in our reserve and on managing. Even for the team, we don't take until now, we don't have like budget to give them their salary. So it based also on some external project, European funded project. Also on some, let's say, independent contract done by some organization like, let's say, MedPAMS, PARAC, for some expert that we are trying to deal with them in our MPA, and they are doing this kind of activity. So we take data from this kind of expert, and we do this link. In general, when there is a call, we go for it, and we try our best to submit and to have this kind of fund. But yes, it's not easy at all. It's difficult, and it's like about for me as a manager, it's about motivation, and I love what I do. That is the point. So I am working on many things. I'm working on the financial part, the administrative part, also the monitoring part. I'm trying to also do this kind of proposal. So it will be like, let's say 1 person or 2 persons are doing all this kind of activity, but they should take in consideration not money, but the love of protecting and the love of doing what they love and what they protect. That is the point. So it's about motivation. And other experience concerning no budget, I don't know if anyone like to do it like it is, but it should be like something enthusiastic for any researcher. For example, for me as an MPA manager, when I publish my results on an international journal, I found it like, so I'm so proud to do it. And it gives me like something to do the next step, give me this kind of motivation. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali, for this. I think commitment is clearly key, volunteering, relying on civil society work. Thanks. Another comment?
Thank you. Sana Tak from Tunisia. Donc, I think that for about 10 years or 8 years, we worked only with a project budget, and we have not continued fund for our MPA. But it was not an MPA; it was a special marine protective area, and it was a natural reserve. And I think that when we are enthusiastic, when we continue to work, we can do many things, even with few money, our budget. But the civil society can make big work if they want to protect. But now, when we have fund, it's better because we can work in a quiet way. We can think about many things, scientific issues, etc. So I think we discover this difference now between when we have not budget and we work on writing projects to have money, and when we have a convention with MedFund, etc. It is better. Thank you.
Thank you, Sana. What I understand from you is that when you have no budget, all your day, you just go through the day by submitting project. This is your day-to-day job. But when you have a longer support, then you have more time to really implement activities on the ground. So it is linked with the management effectiveness. Because if you are using all the hours of a day just to submit projects, you don't have time to implement activities, conservation activities on the ground. Yes, Ali.
Yeah.
That's the last comment, Ali, because
Just to say something important also, because it is like an important experience to share it. It is like, of course, we are working on the involvement of stakeholders, especially people are working and helping a lot, especially NGO also. It's helped us a lot as management of the MPA, and also to have like some fund is like this link between the MPA and the municipalities. So it is so important because in general municipalities have a lot of fun because it's based on development and a lot of cooperation and twinning program with other countries. So they give like a percentage to this MPA so they can work on it. So it is so important. And concerning the HIMA part, maybe my colleague from Lebanon talk about it. What is the difference between a HIMA and an MPA? It is like the HIMA, it is taking policies from the municipality. So the decision is taken directly from the municipality, not from the Ministry of Environment. But here to open like something important, the HIMA should always be under the umbrella of the MPA. It is so important, not be an independent organization, let's say, or something. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ali. Yeah, one more comment from the room, and maybe we see if we have comments online also. No? Okay. Oui, Madame?
Okay, thank you very much, Omar. I'm Mokhtar Saeed from Libya. So I will share some experience about how we can reach the effective management. So in Libya, as you know, maybe we have only 2 MPAs at the previous time. So it is established since 2011, but we don't have a management plan in those marine protected areas. But now, within Ministry of Environment, before we start to establish the MPAs there, we have a socio-economic study in Gulf of Sirte, which is funded by EU with collaboration with SPARAC. So I had done this study at 2020, and really we have choose some places which is hotspot for biodiversity. And the main good thing that we have done at that time to build the trust with the fishermen and with the local communities, all of them, they are support the MPA. So we started from only the project. Until now, we don't have, this is established now, and they start to have a management plan for Shash protected area, which is west of Sirte city. I'm sure in future, if we have fund this area, it is have a lot of studies about sea turtles, also Posidonia oceanica, and we have a good example with the local communities and the fishermen. They all support us to have it as an MPA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you for your inputs and discussion that we have. I think that the first thing also we should think about is how much money do we need to manage properly our MPA, because this is the first question that a financial partner will ask you, how much money do you need? So we have to make that clear and to have, let's say, a financial assessment of our needs to implement the different activities we want to implement in our marine protected areas. So maybe we should start with this first presentation dealing exactly with this topic of how much money do we need and where does the money come from. And I will leave the floor to Monsieur Ahmed Abdallah from the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency, talking about the business planning for coastal and marine ecosystem, the case of Saloum MPA. I hope, Mr. Ahmed Abdallah, you're here with us.
Yes, I'm
online.
Here with you. I'm online. I'm very sorry for not being able to attend in person. It was completely out of my hand. So.
Okay, no, it's okay. We can hear you now. Welcome.
Okay. Should I share my screen for my presentation?
Yes. And please, Mr. Abdallah, it's about 10 minutes presentation. So if you go like an overview of what you did so that you saved some times for questions from the room. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we see it.
Okay.
Perfectly.
Hello, everyone. First, thank you for having me here. My name is Ahmed. I'm from Egypt. I was part of the team who prepared Saloum Protected Area Business Plan 2019-2023. I hope you find it useful. First, let's start by a bit of background about the protected area. The protected area is located in the northwest part of Egypt, on the border with Libya. It was announced as a protected area in 2010 with a total area of 383 kilometers square. As I said, the protected area is in a border area, which is a good news and a bad news. A good news because it's a high security area, so it is not easy to violate the laws and regulations. And it's a bad news too, because it's a high security area and it's not easy to move freely or implement conservation activities without getting permission. The protected area, as I said, is managed by the Egyptian government, represented by Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. Community in the protected area are either Bedouin or incomer. Bedouin are the local communities. They represent 70% of the population. Incomers represent 30%. And incomers are those who immigrated from all over Egypt to settle in the area. The protected area is biodiversity rich with terrestrial wildlife, sensitive marine ecosystem, geological features. Saloum also is an important bird flyway between Africa and Europe. Also, it holds several threatened endangered species. Although it's a high security area, it still witnesses pressure on its biodiversity due to expansion of agriculture, overgrazing, and unsustainable fishing. Okay, like all protected areas in Egypt, and I think all over the Mediterranean, the protected areas suffer lack of financial resources. Also, the existing financial resources are not used efficiently. Saloum protected area has only one source of income, which is the government budget. During the preparation of this business plan, there was no management plan. So the business plan team has to exert more effort in reviewing more plans and doing more analysis in order to overcome this challenge. Another important challenge is that the protected area, there is no historical data about the financial situation of the protected area. Also, there is no information about the financial resources needed to achieve the short-term and long-term objective of the protected area. Of course, needless to say, without this piece of information, the protected area will not be able to achieve its long-term and short-term objectives. Okay, how did we do this business plan? The business plan was developed by a team of experts consisting of economists, financial experts, and environmental consultants. We started by collecting information about the current status of the protected area. Then we conducted a field visit and several meetings and consultations with almost all stakeholders, including government institutions, cooperative association, youth centers, experts. This also was followed by a comprehensive review of the available literature. This study includes 4 kinds of analysis: SWOT analysis, which identifies the strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities and threats of the MPA; a stable analysis, which assesses the 8 key influencers, which are socio-cultural, technological, economic, environmental, political, legal, and ethical, and demographic. We also added a stakeholders analysis to identify the people of interest and to ensure that their interests are addressed in the plan. And finally, we conducted a financial analysis, which includes the current situation, financial projection, and funding need analysis. In addition, the business plan team has conducted a review of the business plan guidelines, best practice, and the other business plans that was developed in Egypt. As I said before, at the time of preparing this business plan, there was no management plan. So the business plan team has to propose a management structure for the MPA based on similar protected areas in Egypt, as well as best practice and international protected area guidelines. The management structure includes 5 programs: resource use and visitor management, patrolling and law enforcement, research and monitoring, education, communication and outreach, management and administration. Based on the financial analysis and the management structure, The business plan team identified the management performance and the financial needs through 3 scenarios: the actual scenario, the basic scenario, the optimal scenario. The actual scenario refers to the current level of performance. The basic scenario refers to the satisfactory level of performance, and the optimal scenario refers to the highly satisfactory level of performance. For each of the basic scenario and the optimal scenario, staffing, capital investment, and infrastructure required was illustrated. Moreover, the level of operation for each program was illustrated. Finally, and based on the financial analysis and the performance scenario, we came up with the funding gap analysis, the funding gap operating under basic scenario, and the funding gap was operating under optimal scenario. We also illustrated the likely impact of operating under each of the scenarios, the actual scenario or basic scenario or the optimal scenario. So how we are going to fulfill this funding gap? Obviously, the most valuable good in Saloum protected area is tourism. The MPA can support a wide range of tourism service which can attract tourists, nature lover, bird watcher, and ecotourists. Accordingly, nature-based tourism and recreation seems to be the most valuable revenue generation option for the protected area. Also, the protected area has a good opportunity for education and scientific research. Also, this conclusion is in line with the vision of the government of Egypt on Matruh Governorate, which the protected area is located. In this plan, the government promotes Saloum protected area as a coastal tourism center and international tourism attractiveness. For this purpose, the team identified the valuable goods that could support the wide range of tourism for the protected area, the services which can attract new customers to the MPA, and the customers who are willing to pay for these goods and services. In addition, the business plan team identified all the possible financing source for the protected area, and we categorized the same into 3 categories: site level mechanisms, which refers to revenue generated from inside the protected area itself, like from concession of entrance fees. The national level mechanism, which refer to flow of finance to the protected area from the government, like from the government budget, environmental protection fund, or debt for swap. And finally, international sources, which refer to communicating with donor and international organization in order to grab financial flow from international sources. Also, all possible revenue sources were then compared based on the ease of implementation, relative benefits, and priority. In order to make things actionable, we provide a 5-year action plan. This 5-year action plan includes all financial and revenue generation sources. They ranked based on its importance, and we provided a 5-year plan to implement to help the protected area in implementing these financing sources. So what have we learned from this business plan? Actually, not from this business plan only, but from all plans that we have participated in as a team. The most important thing before implementing any plan, it's important to understand the social and economic linkage between the community and the surrounding environment. Also, it's very important to assess the level of resilience for the community before implementing any plan in the area. The second lesson is involvement of stakeholders. Without the involvement of stakeholders, implementing the business plan, the management plan, or any kind of plan will be very difficult. So you have to involve all stakeholders in the implementation process. The third one, which is also very important, it's important to have a commercial service plan. This plan provides a detailed step-by-step on how to implement each revenue generation activity. Sometimes the protected area management are not aware of how to implement this revenue generation activities. So it's important to have a commercial service plan that can provide like a feasibility study for each revenue generation activities and how to implement them. Okay, so what's our recommendation? We provided around 11 recommendations in our business plan, but I will select 2 recommendations because from my perspective, I see they are the most important recommendations. The first one is progress measurement. Measuring the progress toward achieving the sustainable financing for the protected area itself. In order to do this, we provided two indicators. The first one, what percentage of income is generated from site and local sources. It's crucial that the site and local sources should be the majority of income. At least 80% of the income should come from site and local sources, because this is a sign of sustainable financing for the protected area. Also, it's important to measure the effort exerted by the protected area management in grabbing financial resources from international sources, because also it is important to have a portfolio between site and local mechanism and international mechanisms in order to avoid any financial shocks. The second recommendation, which is also very important, is developing partnership. We came up with two important partnerships. The first one is in the form of advisory committee, which comprises all stakeholders in the protected area: governmental organization, Coast Guard, research institution. All stakeholders of the protected area must be participated in the advisory committee. This is very important to reconcile the interest of all stakeholders and to ensure smooth implementation of the business plan. The second partnership, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, the protected area is located in a border area, and it is very difficult to implement any activities without the Coast Guard. So it's important to have a protocol of cooperation with the Coast Guard. This protocol of cooperation will help the protected area in controlling tourism activities. It will help the protected area in collecting revenue from site and local sources. It also will help the protected area in implementing its conservation activities easily without going in conflict with the Coast Guard. I think I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for being so fast. I'm trying to say everything in a very short time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ahmed Abdallah. That was really clear. That was perfect on time. Thanks so much for presenting. Is there any question? Yeah, we have one question from Montenegro in the room.
From the Mediterranean. Hello, Marie Romani. I'm working for MedPan. Dear Mr. Ahmed Abdallah, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. You mentioned in your business planning the biodiversity offset, but you indicate it's a low priority in your business plan. And I was wondering if there is any regulation, any law at national level, because I remember in the past there was a study in the Med that said that in many non-EU countries of the Med, there is no offset regulation, and could be, I remember the French Development Agency, Guillaume Chiron, explained that in many parts of the world, this could be some good income. So I was wondering, my first question is there any regulation related to biodiversity offset? And the second point is about, we heard at MedPan in several years ago that in Egypt, there was a national fund, and the income of this national fund, I think it was managed by EEAA, come from fines, from infringements to environment. And I understood in the past that this national fund was dedicated to protected areas, especially in the Red Sea and the Red Sea part. So I was wondering if it still exists.
Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful question. With regard to the first one, no, we don't have any regulation for biodiversity offset in Egypt. And that's why we didn't give it a high priority in our ranking. Also, biodiversity offset have not been implemented in Egypt before. So we don't have experience with such kind of revenue generation, if we can say. That's why we didn't give here more attention. We like to, while we were preparing this business plan, we had to review what has been done in Egypt protected area before. What is the best practice? How we are going to be supported by the law and rules and regulation. For the biodiversity offset, no, this was not done before. But with regards to your second questions, fines, yes, we have the Environmental Protection Fund. All revenue generated from protected area goes directly to the Environmental Protection Fund, which is managed by the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. When the Environmental Protection Fund receives this fund, it spends it back on the environment in general, not on biodiversity only. And this is one of our problems. The money collected from the protected area, we cannot retain it and pay it back to the conservation activities, rather than it's paid for all kinds of environmental activities in Egypt. That's one of the problems. Yes, we still collect fines and penalties from when a ship spill oil on the sea, or when they crash on coral reefs in the Red Sea. Yes, it's the same, and it still exists in Egypt.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Am I clear?
Yeah. Thank you. It's okay, Marie? Yes. Another question from the room here or online? Otherwise, maybe we can move on. There is just one comment from my side. We can tell that economists help you, because when you have a column where natural ecosystem are called goods, it just raised the concern to me. So I think this is something also we will talk about this morning, is finding the right balance between generating revenues, but also not to forget the goal of marine protected areas. The goal of marine protected area is to protect natural ecosystem. So it could serve as a basis to support, as you mentioned, some tourism activities. It has to be eco-friendly tourism activities, and it has to be well managed. So, but I think this balance, maybe we can talk about that later on in some more presentation. So is there any other experience of financial assessment of marine protected areas conducted by MPA managers here in the room that you want to share? No, so maybe we can move to the next presentation. So the title for this session is, are there any magical recipes or at least best practices in the Mediterranean that we could highlight and maybe replicate in other countries? And we will learn from Timothée Cook from Blue Seeds regarding the setup of local financing mechanism that they are supporting in different Mediterranean countries. So Timothée is here in the room with us today. So please, Timothée, you have around 10 minutes. You can save some time for questions.
Thank you very much, Romain. Thank you for having me. So yes, I'm the Science and Training Officer of Blue Seeds, based in Bordeaux, France, and I have come here to talk to you about the implementation of our support programs on local financing mechanisms. And so these are not magical solutions, as you will see. Okay, could we go back just, please? Back, not forward, back, please. All the way back, not forward. So you've seen it all, and I hope you like this presentation. Are there any questions? Okay. Okay, next, please. So I won't develop on the need for funding. This, for those who don't know, it was also well developed in this publication from 2015 from Thomas Binet, my director, in this publication in a MedPan series. And so there's a lack of funding, but I think there's also this this important notion of financial sustainability, which is diversification of revenues. And so I'd like to talk to you today a little bit about the diversification of revenues, which is important. And this is what we try to deliver through our support programs on local financing mechanisms. Next slide, please. Okay, so Blue Seeds DNA sort of stems from a guide on financing mechanisms, which we published almost a couple of years ago. And this guide so far has 4 chapters. The first one developing a financial strategy for Mediterranean MPAs. We'll explain how to develop financial strategy, do business planning, optimize costs, optimize revenues, reduce costs. And it actually can be used jointly with the MedPlan tool, which is something that was developed by MedPlan, Blue Seeds, Vertigo Lab, specifically for helping managers do business planning. So you can go on either Blue Seeds or MedPlan's website to access the tool and the training program that goes with it. There is also a chapter on visitor fees. Visitor fees will be talked about a little bit later on, but this is something that we developed as a support program as well. Visitor fees, as you know, is paying an entrance fee to enter an MPA, and this fee can be used as a revenue for conservation activities by the MPA. A chapter on concession fees. Concession fees are a similar principle, leasing a concession for a new activity or an activity that you don't want to implement anymore, and you delegate this in exchange for money to a third party. And finally, something which is less known, it's the revolving fund system, particularly in the case of changing gears for fishermen towards small scale fisheries towards sustainable gear. And it basically works as a revolving fund because you give money to fishermen, they change their gear, and then they repay you back into the fund, and the money can be used again as a loan to another fisherman to change their gear. I'll come back on this a little bit later. Next slide, please. And I just like to take the opportunity to mention that we have the release of a new chapter to this guide in about 2 weeks' time on the 9th of November. For those who are interested, it's about project funding. Something which we've said, unfortunately, there is too much of project funding, but the money's there, so might as well have a recipe to go and get it. Okay, so the release is soon, and you can find your way to registration by following the links on our social media. Next slide, please. Okay, so first example was our study, sorry, not our study. That's more of my scientist background speaking there. Our program on implementing visitor fees. And we did this with 4 pilot sites over the course of almost a year in the Mediterranean. One of those is right outside here. The take-home message is that it is very complicated, and Marno might disagree with me, but the fact is that at Brioni you are very privileged, and so in a nutshell, we encountered many problems to implement these visitors fees, and the main one being the legal framework in most countries. It's not that simple. There are some favorable frameworks in this country. Katich, there is the main problem at the time was there was no management body to put this system into place. But that was an issue. In Karaburun Sazan in Albania, the main problem was not the legal framework. It was how do we redistribute this money that we have from the visitor fees? Does it go back up to the ministry, or do we use it where we are? So they still are not clear on that. Kanal Luka, the Šibenik County in Croatia, well, they have authority on land, but they're not allowed to have revenues from the ocean because they're not a nature park or a national park. So there is the legal framework causing trouble. And Gokova, well, the managing organization is an NGO, and it doesn't have the authority to collect such fees. So, but this is something that we can talk about perhaps later as well. We have the tools. We know how to put these fees into place, but there's a problem with the legal framework. Next slide, please. I won't develop here. We have the tools, we have the support program, but we do not have any pilot sites yet to set up the concession fee program. It is something that also at Brioni you have a lot of experience with, and I'm sure that can be interesting to listen to. Okay, next slide, please. There are different ways to collect visitor fees or entrance fees, and one of them is to go through mooring zones. Mooring zones, if you are a manager of an MPA with mooring boats, you want them to moor in an orderly fashion. You want them to moor at the mooring zone. You want them to not destroy your Posidonia by throwing their anchor everywhere. And so it's interesting to notice that for those managers who have to deal with moorings, well, almost up to 90% of revenues that are generated by mooring fees and MPAs sometimes go just to paying the cost of managing those mooring zones, which means that the revenues that are generated are used to pay the salaries of the people who collect the fees. So it's very, very inefficient. Next slide, please, which is why at Blue Seeds, we developed an application called Blue Mooring, which is now being deployed in the Med. Well, the purpose of this, as I said, is to make things a lot easier for managers. Next slide, please. And so that at the end of the day, well, this tool will allow managers to allocate their resources, their staff, to other activities than just collecting fees. Other activities, including not just conservation, but also raising awareness, which the application helps them do. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a hot topic, and this is something that there is no real project out there that helps managers, as I'm sure you're aware, develop and implement blue carbon financing mechanism to conserve Posidonia. So it's something that we are humbly working on at Blue Seeds. I'm not specifically on this project. Fernando Ruiz, who is online, might be able to give us more details, but it's called the Potential of Posidonia Oceanuca Blue Carbon Eco-Mooring Projects to Avoid Anchoring Related CO2 Emissions, and it is a collaboration with the Center for Advanced Studies of Blanes in Spain. Next slide, please. This is the study site in the Bay of Guiola off the coast of Spain. Next slide. And here is Fernando up there working in the lab on the cores that were taken from the field. The field basically is about measuring the stored carbon plus the carbon lost to anchorage damage. And so that is one of the challenges of this study, is to get that parameter correct as well. And the goal is to develop a blue carbon co-financing mechanism for eco-moorings. So you will not get an answer to how does it work, because we don't know yet, or if it's, how do you say, operational, because it is not. But it is challenging, and it might be a lot more difficult than we might have heard it sound like. Next slide, please. Okay, so MPAs, inside MPAs, that's all very well, but we all know that it's probably a good idea to work outside of MPAs, right outside, around MPAs with local communities. I think we're all convinced of this. So finding ways to develop economical activities around the MPAs is something that we have been doing at a pilot site on the island of Lastovo in Croatia, with what we now have coined the Blue Business Incubator, where through a step-by-step process, we support entrepreneurs who have ideas of new activities, develop them and set them up. Next slide. And it is a collaboration with WWF and ZEF and the Nature Park in Lastovo. Here are a few examples of the projects that were born from this program. One is developing fishing tourism, the other one bulk waste management on the island, the other one sustainable wine production, and finally a fishers and farmers cooperative working together to make products from the sea and from the land. So you see, you don't always need to work in an MPA, and perhaps there's some space for discussion on how MPA managers can engage with communities outside the MPA to reduce those pressures which come from the outside into the MPA. Because if you only protect what's inside without working on the outside, you're just going to try and build a wall, which doesn't exist, of course. Next slide, please. And this is the most horrible slide you have ever seen, which looks like a description of the European Union. So don't focus on trying to understand it, perhaps just the general approach. Same idea, we need to work with the people living outside MPAs, and small scale fishermen are often part of that. They navigate inside and outside the MPA. Sometimes we co-manage fisheries with them. Sometimes, well, they're just fishing outside the MPA, but what they do outside affects what happens inside. Whatever the situation, it's in our interest as MPA managers to have them shift their gear to sustainable fishing gear. Correct. So in the European Union, there is a lot of money from the European Fisheries Fund to help fishermen shift away from more impactful practices towards more sustainable ones. There's a lot of money through the European Fisheries Fund. However, it is very difficult for small scale fishermen to access this money because, first of all, the paperwork is just awful. It's really, really difficult. And second of all, they need to front the money. So they need to change their gear, buy the equipment, prove they've done it, send the bills to the European Union, and then the European Union will reimburse that money. So they have to have treasury, they have to be able to front the cash. And so they don't have the technical skills to do the paperwork, and they don't have the money to front the expenses. So what the project here in partnership with WWF will do is well, we've created a pre-financing facility. So it doesn't have a name yet, but it's an association under French law, which allows private companies and donors to donate, and they get a tax reduction based on the law of their country. And what this pre-financing facility will do is act as a guarantee for banks who will loan the money to the small scale fishermen. They will then have the money, and they will be able to change their gear. And once they've done that, and they can prove they've paid for those expenses themselves, they can apply with the help of a technical assistance from the pre-financing facility. They can apply to get the money from the European funds, which will enable them to refund the banks, who will have always been very happy with the situation, because the pre-financing facility acts as a guarantee. In case they default, they will step in and refund the bank. So that's the general logic here. So yeah, this should be starting soon with, I think, 100 fishermen. I forgot to mention that the MAVA is the generous donor of the initial amount, which is in the pre-financing facility. It's the exit grant that we received from them before the end of their activities. Next slide. I'd like to thank in particular, yes, the MAVA Foundation. I couldn't put their logo everywhere, but on every slide, they were there to fund those activities, every single activity. Take-home message, I think I was clear. Perhaps leave space for some discussion if there are any questions, but I don't know if we have the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Timothée. That was really clear. Thanks a lot. Stay around here because we might have some questions from the room. Do you have any question? Yes, yeah, there is one question here. Marno? Okay, we start with Marno.
So the buoys that you showed us.
Please introduce yourself and the who you are, which
okay.
park,
Marno
which country.
Miletić, National Park, Brioni, Croatia. I just wanted to ask, those buoys that you showed us, the yellow ones, they are the smart buoys. The application for monitoring the vessels coming in, locking on to a buoy, to corpo morto. I don't know what it's called in English. No, this is the mechanism, if I understood correctly.
Okay, so sorry if I was too quick there. So the buoy is not a smart buoy, it's just a normal buoy. It just has a QR code on it. So that might have been a misleading picture, I'm sorry. The system is just about an application. It is not about buoys. So the system is about helping managers manage their mooring zone. The moorings themselves is the manager's responsibility. And personally, I do not believe in smart buoys because I think it's not effective. It's overly priced, and that's not where you're going to get your most of the worth of your money and your efforts. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, of course, because I wasn't so clear, because I knew that in Kornati National Park in Croatia,
Yes.
they've done something this year, last year with the smart buoys, and actually they say that it's okay, that it's helping them because when the vessel approaches the buoy and connects, then they know that it's there and they can go
Yes.
there and charge the
Yes.
fee.
If you have lots of money, why not? But I think it's really not the way forward. I don't think high tech is the way forward. But that's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Merci, Timothée. Yeah, one question from Marie. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, question, because you mentioned, Timothée, at the beginning, the visitor fees. You say it's complicated, there is no legal framework, etc. And I remember an example in Costa Rica, I think, of voluntary contribution from visitor, not like a visitor fee obligatory. And they created, it was a national park. They didn't have the legal framework to receive those voluntary contribution. And there was a kind of creation of an independent organization. I think the status was NGO, like Friends of the Park, to collect. Do you have any idea on this? Is this something interesting in case there is too many layers to pass in terms of legal framework for visitor fees? Also, who will collect this? And another second question, you mentioned the concession fees. And I remember in Tanger Forum, Romain, you were working for the Saint-Martin Reserve in the Caribbean. And there was many questions from the managers in the room about, well, the example of Saint-Martin was amazing. It's really interesting. But was the question of the carrying capacity? Because if too many, let's say, if a ratio of the revenue of the MPs is from those concession fees, it could have a problem in terms of what about the carrying capacity? What is the limit to set? I don't know if I'm...
Okay, yeah, that was very clear, Marie. Thanks. That's a lot of questions, and actually one might be better addressed at Marno for the carrying capacity. For the voluntary-based approach of donating, that's tricky. And I know of some examples. Actually, one was in Albania where they had a little gift box and people could put some money in it. You know, there are honest peoples around, there are dishonest peoples around. It can work, it cannot work. There's a lot of red tape, a lot of paperwork in the Mediterranean, and maybe some of the countries that you cited have maybe a more flexible approach. People work more on this with this sort of informal economy, so it's maybe easier. Yeah, it's a good question, and it might be a way of bypassing the law, but my personal opinion is that we should really push, and that's my recommendation, really push to help the legal framework change so that we can, you know, have MPAs implement and benefit from that money. As to the carrying capacity, yeah, I mean, obviously there's the risk of seeing money from visitor fees as, well, money, which it is, but wanting more visitors. And I think, yeah, there are quite a lot of studies out there trying to decide what is the magic number of visitors for the carrying capacity. And yeah, there are some approaches to study that, but I don't really know how they work personally. And but Marno, I'm sure, can tell us how many visitors should be on Brioni, how many should we get off the island. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Timothée. I think, yeah, this issue of carrying capacity, as you say, Marie, is key. I think that this is really something that MedPan Network maybe think about and maybe share some good experiences, because I think that since this morning we are talking about this subject without really mentioning this term carrying capacity. But I mean, the overall objective is to find the right balance, like you said, to have some, to see tourism as a source of revenue, but also to be aware that this source of revenue could damage the ecosystems we are supposed to protect. So to what extent, what is the limit, what we should take care of. So I think that few examples in the world. It's not easy, this capacity, this carrying capacity issue, because sometimes it's not always a number of people. It could be also the quality of tourism. You can have a lot of people and they don't damage the area, and you can have like 5 people that are able to damage a whole island. So it's not always easy, but definitely I think this is a topic we should really dig as a network and share experiences. Maybe one last presentation before we move for lunch, because I think, Timothée, you mentioned several times Marno and Brioni National Park. So I think it's time for you, Marno, to give your presentation. So the floor is yours, like 10, 12 minutes, and so that we can have some time for questions.
I will put a stopwatch so I know where I am. Okay. So I'm Arno Milotic from the Brioni National Park, again from Croatia. So I will just go really fast through this first slide because I guess most of you already heard that we are a national park in Croatia and founded as an MPA from 1983. Totally 100% owned by the state, and there is no inhabitants on the island from 1961. Also, there's part of the island that is a residential area for the protocol residential estate for the protocolar purposes of the president of the Croatia. We can go to the next slide. So what I learned so far is basically that all the Western states of the EU mostly in their budget have 100% or 90% of state funding. And some of the money comes also sometimes from the project funding, depending on the source. While on eastern states and southern states of the EU, let's call them, well, poorer countries, if you like, there is a part of state funding, but it's usually very little in proportion, and most of the financial support comes from self-funding or project funding. Also, the state, as these countries were mostly in this socialist regime before, so it was very common that the states are owned this land and the buildings and the restaurants and the hotels in this area. So it's quite normal that the state decided to, okay, let's give you some part of that hotels or the restaurants or something, and then you can get some money from it and we will give you less money from the state budget. So that was the general idea from the beginning, to help funding the MPAs, because which is good, but is also not good. Why it's not good? Because basically when somebody gives you something, it's good that they give you something that it's running properly, that it's new. But in the time in the 90s, when they gave us the hotels and the restaurant and so on, basically they were 100 years old and they needed a change and a lot of investments. So and you don't have money for investment. So it's a progress dealing over the years, little by little, of changing things, implementing and investing so you can upgrade your budget. So it's not so easy to do. It's a progression of 20-30 years. So most common sources of self-funding mechanisms are usually, as Timothy already mentioned, the entrance fees or some kind of restaurant, souvenir shops, sports equipment renting. Some MPAs have small motels, hostels, or concession fees. We can go to the next slide. So this is basically our sources of incomes. What it doesn't necessarily has to work for you, because every MPA is totally different. For example, here we have a revenue in hotels and restaurants by 36% of our budget, which is almost 11 million this year, euros. Entrance fee, tickets, it's 33%. Sport equipment rentals, 10% of the budget. Entrance fee tickets for vessels, just 3%. But 3% is a lot of money. It's about 400,000 euros. Concession fees, 2%, but it's maybe 250,000 euros. So for some MPA, this could be a lot of money. This could be maybe the whole financing mechanism. So maybe concession fees in some other MPAs could be a whole lot, the whole income. We can go to next slide. So concession fees for tourism activities that we have is boat tours done by local boat owners, diving and kayaking, who is also done by local diving clubs. We gave souvenir shops to run by a private companies or private persons. Coffee bars that were not interesting to us, we gave to also to the private owners, to a private company. And we have this theater summer plays that is done by local theater groups that we also charge concessions to do in our park. So what is the benefit of all of this is that you have a steady income revenue all the time. And of course, you use that to uphold the conservation measures. We have a short-term duration of concessions up to 5 years. And this mechanism allows better management of activities which are more business oriented and dependent on the outside market. Basically, you give away to concessions something that you cannot control on your own, that you're lacking people or the financing to do renovation. For example, if I have a souvenir shop that my people and I have problem getting the souvenirs because I'm a public company, a private owner surely can more easily adapt to the market and the needs of the visitors and can make much more money than I do. So he has an interest in that, but also I have an interest in that because I will get more money from the concession fee than I will get if I do this thing by my own. We can go, main challenges are elaboration of the concession agreement and monitoring and controlling. This is really, really problematic. So you have to make a really good agreements that you know what you're doing. We can go to the next slide. So here I wrote some advantages and disadvantages. Well, it's always good to have your own money. If you have your own money, you can have better management because you have secured self-funding on targeted conservation measures. You don't have to ask anybody if you need to do something. You can do it on your own. And as we learned in the last couple of years, we have this enormous change in climate change and invasive species. So if you have your own money, you get a better and faster adaptation and implementation of active conservation measures. Of course, you don't use your own money all the time. You use your money and then you ask the state for funding of this mechanism, but you immediately start to implement it. So you can run better in management of your own park. By the time the state approves the money, it's a year past and the damage would be total sometimes. And basically you get your money back, but in, let's say, I don't know, 15 months. You get a financial stability in case of state funding reduction, like we had in COVID. No, self-reliance of employment needs and hiring. You can hire the people when you need it the most, and then like a seasonal workers or maybe permanent staff, depends what you need. You get a better long-term planning and financial stability, better service for your visitors. When you give concessions to, as I explained before, to somebody else, to run somebody else that you usually control, and you deal more in control and monitoring. Better awareness of behavior of visitor in a protected area. Why? I don't know, but for some reason, people, when you charge them an entrance fee, are more appreciative of the place that they are visiting. When you let them in freely, we have this knowledge. It's unbelievable, but we have this every year. We do this open gate at the end of the year. They destroy everything. I mean, when they pay little or no money for the entrance, they don't respect the place. When during the season, the high season, when the tickets are so expensive, we have no problems at all. I mean, because you get more educated people, somebody who appreciates nature, somebody who is willing to pay extra because knows that this money goes into your funding because of the conservation measure. So it's a process. You get also long-term private partners, and you involve your community into active and sustainable implementation of conservational policy. That is the main aspect of that. Also, this is a disadvantage. Why? Because you're involving a large number of new subjects into meddling with your park management affair. So you have to be real careful with that. Local community is always profit guided. So you need of strict concession rules and supervision. And you get a large increase of visitors, you get a marketing expansion through locals, because most MPA don't have any money for marketing purposes. And when you include the local population into that, they are driven by profit gaining, and they will, of course, advertise you more. But you have to control all the misinformation going outside then. So you have to be really careful with this. We can go to the next slide. So I'm 10 minutes, sorry, but I have to be a little more. What are the recommendations? We have to develop a good baseline management plan, preferably for a 10-year period or more. Revision of the plan should be every 3 to 4 years. In Croatia, it's 5 years, and it's too long. It's just too long. Because of these invasive species and the changes that we get every year, we have to be able to change the plan as we need to, even before this period. This is very, very strictly ruled in Croatia, and I think it's really, really bad to wait something for 5 years to change. Also, activities and detailed planning for every year. This in Croatia is approved by the Ministry of Sustainable Development, as most of you have environmental ministry. Financial planning and budgeting should be in accordance with your yearly management plan of the MPA, of course. And this has to be done individually, because we, even in the same country, are so different places in different needs that we need to do different types of projects. And this has to be done individually, because why am I saying this? Because some states have budget funding from the ministries that, I don't know, the ministry decides, I give you 3 million euros, 2 million euros to you, 1 million here. It doesn't account to anything. It just covers the salaries and so on. That's not a good thing. Maybe that 1 million budget MPA needs to do some measures, and he needs 1 million more. So we have to say how much money we actually need. This is the most important stuff, is financial stability with diverse portfolios in self-financing. And of course, we have to have a backup secure environmental funds on national level. Entrance tickets and different types of fees, like compensations for usage of the protected area, it has to be clearly communicated that this is a compensation used for conservation, protection, improvement, and sustainability of the MPA. And just that, and explicitly that. if you do not clearly communicate that, then you get a bad result because the visitors thinks, oh, they are profiting from this. This is not the way to do things. We are on MPA. This has to go back into conservation measures. Donations, fundraising usually doesn't work. So it's very difficult, especially when there is a global crisis or pandemic or a recession. It's not a reliable, stable income. You can do it, but this is always going to be very small amount of your income. We can go to next slide. Last slide, yeah. So Croatia has this mechanism that 3% of all national level MPAs, there's 20 of us, national parks and park protection, nature protection parks, all 3% of all the ticket fees goes into this joint fund of the MPAs. And then the MPAs who put money in this fund can apply to it, and they can secure money for their activities if they have this kind of projects that need to be funding in the conservation measure. This was really, really good for us during this COVID time when the state budgeting was plunging down. Also, in Croatia, we have this environmental protection energy efficiency fund, which actually has a lot of money. This is, I think every country has this. This is the CO2 measures. Every country has this level of CO2 that is allowed to have. If you are a country that is underdeveloped, like you have industry that it's very, very low, then you sell the extra CO2 to the countries that need it, like Poland, Italy, or whatever. Actually, this fund gets 230 million euros per year, and they can finance the MPA's project up to 80 or 100%. If it's so they finance the project, the documentation for the project that you're going to apply 100% if it's later EU funded, and if it's a national later funded from the national types of project, then you get 80%. Also, they can co-found every project later that you do in the matter of whatever that is in conservation and environmental policy. So I think that is it. We can go to the last slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marno. That was really clear. Any question from the room for Marno regarding those different mechanisms implemented in the Brioni National Park? That's a quite impressive to see the numbers of and the sources of revenues. Yes, one question.
Hello, I'm Valentina Capanera from Portofino MPA in the north of Italy. First of all, congratulations for your good model of management in Brioni. I would like to have more information regarding how you were able to build a common vision with stakeholders that are not directly involved with the MPA. For example, restaurant, shops, because, for example, divers are the first observators of the benefit of the MPA, or professional fishermen are directly involved. I'm curious regarding this. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if I understood the question, but all the restaurants that we have, the coffee shop, the souvenir shops are inside the MPA that are 100% owned by the government, which was given to us as an MPA to manage. We decided some of that it's not lucrative enough, doesn't make good money, so we decided to give that to the concession fees to the local private companies. And through that, we decided that this fee can never be less than what we earned ourselves. You understand? Has to be higher. Also, it's really, really good because in the first few years, you kind of support the locals to profit more. But when you see that they are profiting more, then you increase the concession fee. So it's going up. And also they are investing all the time into these coffee shops, souvenirs, and so on. So they basically manage it for you, but you decide, for example, when we did the souvenir shops, we prescribe that 50% of all the souvenirs that are sold inside the souvenir shop has to have a park's logo, and that has to be local based. So exactly, locally produced. So we can say 80%, we can say 90%, but of course, also this private owner learned that when he has other products that are not with the logo of the park, they are not selling. So now he sells 100% all the logos on the, so it's, so I don't know if I misunderstood the question, but
Okay, we have a question from Mr. Ahmed Abdallah, who is our guest speaker also online.
First, thanks Murano for this wonderful presentation. I really like it. And I have just two quick questions. The first one regarding to what mechanism you use in deciding the entrance fees amount. Do you use like willing to pay surveys, or what is the mechanism you use? The second question is about, I noticed that most of the revenue that generated to the protected area came from visitors to the protected area, like entrance fees and concessions and this kind. Do you think this is stable enough? If you witness any decrease in the visitor in the protected area due to any economic conditions, pandemics, that's what happened in Egypt. We witnessed a huge reduction in visitors to the protected area due to COVID-19. So, and this lead to a huge decrease in revenue of the protected area. Is it the same case in your protected area or different? Thanks again.
thank you for your question. It's really, really good, two questions. So the first one, yes, we are doing the surveys, but not on how much the entrance fee should cost. This is something that we decide for ourselves, and I will explain why. We do the surveys of what was Timothy was telling before, of how many people in the amount of time should enter the park and not do damage. So that's the important stuff. So basically, as we are an island, we have a limitations on the boat itself. So the boat can go every hour and can ship 400 passengers. So basically we can have 800 passengers in an hour, not a problem, but then I would need to additionally buy another boat, and we don't want that. The expenses go much, much higher. So we are much, much under the level that we can take during the one day. For example, also the distribution of the visitors is hugely important. And for example, sometimes you can have a large number of visitors, but implement measures that it doesn't affect the nature. For example, Plitvice Lakes National Park has this walking paths made of wood that the visitors go on that. Basically, they have no impact at all at the trails and at the pathways of the park or at the water or the lake, because they visit the surface above. They just looking around. They have no impact at all. If they would allow people to go walking through the pathways or across the meadows, of course you will see immediate damage. So this is also very important. So once we decide how many people per day or per month or per year can we have inside the park, then we calculate our expenses, and based on that we can calculate how much money we need to cover
it all, to cover our project, to cover everything. So it's not our mission to have more money than we need, because we don't need it. We are not a profitable organization. It's just the amount. Also, sometimes you exceed and you do the profit. Why? You exceed the amount of your costs because you want to scale down the number of visitors in the park. And then then you get better service, less visitors and more money. Sometimes Plitvice Lakes usually do this. Why is their entrance ticket so expensive? There is no reason. The reason is that if it would be cheap, you will get 3 times more visitors. That's the reason. So, and the next question was whether it's stable or not. Of course, it's not stable. We saw that during COVID. The thing is that you are trying to have self-financing, but this largely influential things can disrupt all your budgeting. Of course, some of the parks in Croatia were losing 80% of their budget in 2020. 80%, which were counting on visitor fees that they were gone. So, but of course, the state in that time should fund us from something else, or some of the larger parks have from this profit a secured money from the previous years, and then can go 1 year like that without any support. So this, what I'm telling you, the self-financing has a lot of benefits in the terms of stability.
Thank you very much, Marno, for this. Maybe I suggest that if you have burning questions for Marno, you can sit and have lunch with him, because I think it's time to break for lunch. Marie Romani is hungry, and when she's hungry, you have to behave. So we break now, and we come back at 2:30 in the same room. Thank you. Thank you also all the speakers and attendees online. Good afternoon, all of you. Thank you for being on time, like me. So this is a Mediterranean time. So we are keep going on and discussing about increasing investment in Mediterranean MPAs. So as a reminder, maybe of this session of this morning, we had a presentation from Egypt, Mr. Abdallah, talking about the importance of assessing funding needs and also assessing funding sources to implement MPA activities. Then we had 2 presentations, 2 magical recipes from the Mediterranean region. So we had some practices, best practices by National Park of Brioni, by Marno, and also some other example of local financial mechanism by Timothée. And we are going to move now to 2 different countries. They will share with you their practices in terms of funding and implementation of marine protected areas management activities. Those 2 MPAs are MPAs that we are funding as the Med Fund. As I mentioned to you this morning, we are a conservation trust fund dedicated to support day-to-day management cost of marine protected areas. And we are the proud funders of Flag Pine NGO, which is an NGO involved in the management of one of the most beautiful marine parks in the Mediterranean region, the Karaburun Southern Marine Park. And then we'll have also some speaker from Tunisia, actually 2 speakers. Yeah, he's arriving, 2 speakers from Tunisia. They will be talking about the management, the co-management of the Kuriat Island in Tunisia. So we'll give the floor first to Loretta. So if we can go back to her presentation. So Loretta, she's with us here in Montenegro. So the floor is yours, Loretta. Thanks. Welcome. Yes, you can use this.
How do I?
Just, yeah, yes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauretta Sadiklari, and I'm a representative for Fleckpine NGO, one of the co-managers of Karaburun-Sazan MPA. Today, I want to show you our history on the management of Karaburun-Sazan protected area. Our history starts in, doesn't work? Okay. Okay. Let me make you a small introduction to the Karaburun-Sazan MPA. So Karaburun-Sazan is the first protected area in Albania. It is one of the most beautiful places, as Roman said, and it has quite a large surface. It's like 12,000 hectares. It has major natural values. It has the Posidonia oceanica medios, different species such as Cystisozeria metacea and other important species and habitats. And currently it's facing major threats related to illegal fishing and unsustainable fishing, also to tourism, climate change, invasive species, and other economic activities that are rising in an uncontrollable way. The protected area has a management plan dating from 2050, but at the moment it has a need for renewal. As I said, we are managing the protected area together with RAPA Vlor, which is the Regional Administration of Protected Areas here in Vlor. So, as I said, our history with the management of Karaburun-Sazan MPA started in 2018 when we had the chance to work with MedFund for the implementation of the project supporting the effective management of Karaburun-Sazan MPA. For us, this is like a new experience because we had a type of co-management approach, something new in Albania, where a national agency gathered forces with a civil society to manage a protected area. During this period, so the NGO is us, Fleckpine, then the national agency, it was represented in local level by the Regional Administration of Protected Areas. So we had a lot of work to do. We worked with MedFund to identify our financial gaps and also to identify the topics where we wanted to work and where we could work. We also worked among us to identify the activities and what we wanted to do with this opportunity that we had to manage the protected area. So the challenge was to effectively manage the protected area through this co-management approach that we had. And to achieve this challenge and to fulfill this challenge, we identified several objectives. The first one is to improve the patrolling performance of the protected area. I will go through all of them in later slides. To identify and monitor conservation targets, to strengthen the collaboration among stakeholders, and also to raise awareness on the protection of the MPA and also other issues and topics related to the management of the protected area. So regarding the improvement of the patrolling performance, we supported this process by increasing the number of rangers dedicated to the patrolling activities of the MPA. There is one annual ranger from Fleckpine that supports the activity of the ranger of the national agency. And also there are two other seasonal rangers during the summer season when the pressure on the MPA arises. And we also support the management of the protected area through the maintenance of the equipments used during these patrolling activities. So through a long process, we also identified the conservation targets that we wanted to work on. And we decided that these are going to be the conservation targets, the Cystisozeria metacea, Posidonia oceanica, and Lithophyllum bisoides. This process, so we decided on this three conservation targets by taking into consideration the costs related to their monitoring, the time effort that we needed to monitor them, the human resources, but also the chances to do this monitoring with other stakeholders and other entities. So for these monitorings, we also organize several trainings in order to ensure that the staff of the MPA can do the monitorings in the future. So in terms of sustainability, we think that this is very important because we can't always support ourselves on the external funds. And I'm happy to say that currently, for example, the monitoring of Cystisozeria metacea we are doing by ourselves, and we have a clear maps of distribution of this target in entire MPA. For other targets, for example, for Posidonia oceanica, we still are dependent on external support because it's like a difficult monitoring to do, and we are not yet there to make this type of monitoring ourselves. We are also monitoring the water quality, the physical and chemical parameters of the waters inside the protected area and outside of the protected area, inside the Bay of Lore, but also outside of the Bay of Lore, in order to get the data about these parameters and to check throughout the years how they have changed and how they have impacted the habitats and the species in our MPA. Another important element of our work is the collaboration with the different stakeholders that are somehow targeted directly and non-directly by the work that we are doing. We have supported the establishment of the Management Committee of Protected Areas in Vlora region, and we support each year the gatherings and the meetings that are organized by this committee. This committee serves like a round table where we discuss about the problems that the MPA is facing, not only the MPA, but also other protected areas in our region. We discuss with stakeholders what are their problems, and at the end, we come up with recommendations on how we can avoid these problems and how we can find solutions for them. Awareness raising, of course, is a topic that in our country at least needs to have a major consideration by us. And we have organized several activities targeting different topics, such as the raising awareness about the values of protected areas, because it's the first MPA in Albania, but not everybody knows about the existence of the MPA. So one thing is to let people aware that there is a protected area in our region, and it has these values and we need to protect it. But we also raise awareness about different topics such as the marine litter, because the tourism sector in our country has given a lot of pollution, let's say, to the bays and the sea itself. And we have organized several beach cleaning activities. Climate change also, we have planted several trees in order to fight the climate change effects in our region. There are also a lot of leaflets, panels, banners that are produced in order to make people aware about the existence of the MPA and how they can protect it. Another important topic we have worked on is also gender equality. We made a video where we promoted the role of the women in the nature conservation, and also on how we can push and include them even more in the protection of the nature and support them. Also, since the illegal fishing and the problem with the fishes are a major problem in our MPA, we have organized also workshops with fishers in order to show them the consequences of a bad behavior and how they can improve their behavior in the protection of the MPA. So as a result, we have an improvement of the patrolling performance and also an increase on the presence of the rangers in the MPA, which results also in less illegal fishing activities. And not only, there is an increase of collaboration among stakeholders. As I said, we support the Management Committee of Protected Areas, and I'm happy to say that the head of this committee, which is also the prefect of the city of Vlora, is like one of our major collaborators. He's part of all the activities that we are organized, but also other stakeholders take part of all the activities that we organize. For example, for the beach cleaning activities, there are fishermen that are working with us. There are tourism operators that support us on our missions. We have also a database on the conservation targets of the MPA, and this is very important because for example, the last data that we had for Cistozeria ametaceae before the starting of the project, it was in 2013. After 7 years, we were able in 2020 to get the first data regarding the distribution and on the ongoing how this habitat has gone throughout the years. And now we are doing this monitoring each year, and during these years, we create a database for each of the conservation targets. We also have continuous data regarding the chemical and physical parameters of the waters inside and outside the MPA. There is also capacity building, as I said, through the trainings for the MPA staff. We are now able to do several things that we couldn't do by ourselves before. We are able to do them now. And there is also a lot of awareness raising going on for different topics that support the effective management of the protected area. And as lesson learned, we can say, no, there is also one after this. So as lesson learned, we can say that having the same mindset for the protection of the MPA is very important, because as co-managers, being different entities, but also being different persons, we of course have conflicts with us, but having the same mindset is what keeps us going forward. Also, the communication is very important, not only between the co-managers, but also between the stakeholders in all different levels. Financial sustainability is very important to achieve concrete and tangible results. And also external funding for us remains crucial in achieving these results. But also we see that there is a continuous need for diverse sources of funding. And for this, the elaboration of a fee system will be very important to achieve these sustainable fund resources. And as somebody else said before regarding the fee system in Albania, we had this problem that where do the money go, who spends them, who is going to manage them, who is going to collect them. So having national regulations and frameworks that support this process is very important. Also, the elaboration of financial needs assessment tools is very important to identify the gaps, and this answers the question how much money we need. So if we analyze our financial gaps, then we can answer how much money we need to effectively manage the protected area. Also, the elaboration of 5-year budget plan is very important, because it lets us to show where we are at the moment and what we are going to do, and let us plan, and also gives us the opportunity to each year identify things that we need to do that are needed to be done. Also, focusing and adapting the funds based on the needs of the MPA is very important. And here I include also in day-to-day operational costs, because sometimes we talk about major monitoring and important things, but there are MPAs that don't have computer, or they don't have ink for printing. So this is very important also to support this type of elements. And also, during my experience, I noticed that joining the supports from the national authorities and also from the external funding is very important to achieve this sustainable, effective management, I would say. And through the MedFund project, all the last 4 things we have been able to implement. And this is why I say that the MedFund is a successful experience and tool to effectively manage the protected areas. And I would suggest its replication also in other sites. For example, in Albania, we can't say anymore Karabursa Azan, the first and only protected area. We say now just the first, because this year we had, last year we had the chance to proclaim also another protected area, the Porto Palermo, and we also want to implement this successful experience of Karabursa Azan in Porto Palermo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Loretta. That was really clear, as always. Thanks. Any question for Loretta in Albania? Do you want to? Yes, sir. Wait. Yeah. A mic. And please introduce yourself for the participants.
Hi. I'm Andrea. I'm from Albania, but since Loretta is presenting all these interesting things, I wanted to know also, in addition, it was a monitoring about Monk Seal. I mean, what are the recent results, if you can tell us?
Thank you. So regarding the Monk Seals, there have been several. Okay. I don't want to show my back to you. Okay. Okay. regarding the monk seal, there has been a lot of work done, not only by our project, but also by other projects. And for this, there have been work done in the evaluation of the possible habitats for the monk seal. And there have been several cases that have been identified as possible habitats for the monk seal. And in this habitat have been placed different camera traps, which have captured the monk seals inside of the cave. And this is a monitoring that is going continuously. We have some problems with this because sometimes there are people that are stealing the camera traps and we lose a lot of data. And unfortunately, we have lost like 2 camera traps until now. And it's not the problem with the camera traps, the problem is with the data that have been lost. But still, this is a monitoring that is going through the camera traps. Also, I would like to say that the fishermen are like very positive and helpful during the monitoring of monk seals, because they record with videos when they see the monk seal in the sea, and they don't do anything to it, they just leave it, even if they see it eating the fish or some, because they are in this fight with the fish. Even though there is this conflict with them, they still don't do anything, they don't damage it, they record and they send us the videos. So I would say that we are going in a good path regarding the monitoring of monk seal. And officially in 2021, January 2021 was the first record of monk seal in the caves of Carbon-Sazan. We are continuing the monitoring with camera traps, and we have tried this type of solution. We remove the camera traps during the summer season and we place them in September or at the end of the summer season to avoid losing them.
Al-Mukhtar Said from Libya. We thank you very much for this clear presentation that have a lot of information that we have now. I have seen in your presentation that you have mentioned about the maybe co-management plan and everything. It's well, really, that we need it as well. But you have an example now that sometimes you lost some camera traps. So this is my question where I'm going with the local communities. I think in your presentation, you don't mention about local communities and how you can dealing with them. We need to know, to build that trust with them and how it is needed time, but I think we should focus on local community to be with us in this MPA.
I think somehow I have mentioned that through the fishers and also the schools that we organize several activities. This is the local community and also the tourists that come there, but it's not always local community. They can also be people that come from outside. So I agree with you on having to make stronger connection with them and showing them even more the need to protect the area, but it's not always them. There is also other people that,
sure,
but for all,
I mean for local community in general, it's not only fishermen or tourists. There are many target groups. We should focus on them to be with us and support us to have an effective management. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I
One
wanted to step in. Do that.
Sorry, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. Do you have an idea of the trend of the frequentation of your MPA since it has been well managed in a way? Is it attracting more people and increasing the pressure?
Introduce yourself.
Oh, my name is Constance Corbier-Barthaud from French Facility for Global Environment FFM, supporting this MPA through the Mediterranean.
I will give you just one data. In the beginning, when the MPA was declared, there were only 2 tour boats that took tourists from the city of Lor to the MPA. Now there are 16. And the number of the tourists goes up to 70,000 tourists in a year. 70, yes, that visit the Sazani Island and the Carbon Peninsula. And as I said, 17 big tour boats, but I can't give you exact data about the small tour boats. So for this, we have an evaluation. And this is why I say that pollution is a major problem, because this number of tourists is not always the good ones. They also damage the area. And as I said, for the elaboration of a fee system, not only to ensure income for the management of the MPA, but also to reduce the number of the people visiting the area. Because if you increase the price of the ticket or you put a price for the visiting of the MPA, not so many people will go there. And it also relates also in the debate that we had before regarding the carrying capacity of the MPA. We currently don't have a study regarding the carrying capacity, but we can see with our eyes that this is not the capacity that the MPA can carry. So of course, towards this, yes, and we have to work towards this. Thank you.
Okay, can I ask you one question? We had this discussion at lunch, and I think it's an interesting point to raise about how helpful for an MPA is to have a co-management. You said you were the first MPA in Albania, not the last one, but I guess the first MPA co-management in Albania. In Croatia, for example, we don't have a co-management not in MPA or an terrestrial one. So for us, there is a reluctancy to engage in a partnership with other entities. So what is your message? Can you tell, as we are talking about financing, is it easier or is the same or more challenging to attract donors if you are in a co-management scheme?
I would say for us, it has been easier to attract donors because when we co-manage the protected area with the regional administration protected areas, for them is like a guarantee that we are doing a good work. So we have the support of the national agency, then we also have the support by other projects. And in our case, I don't know how it works in other countries, but the fund that goes from the national agency is insufficient to do a lot of things. It mostly goes for the administrative costs, for the payments and things like that. And the fact that there was this possibility to co-manage the area with an NGO that we can help us to fill this financial gap that we have was welcomed by the national authorities. And they have been, during all this process, very supportive. As I said, we of course have differences. Sometimes it's also defined by the power, sometimes defined by the idea, but the fact that we have the same mindset, as I said, helps us put the work forward. And when it comes to the co-management, I would also mention this fact because we have experienced it now. The institutional stability is very important to ensure the achievement of these results. In the national agency, there have been several changes on the number of the on the people that we have been working with until now. So the head of the national agency is not anymore. The head of the regional agency is not anymore. And the head of the management chief is not anymore. So these were all the people we used to work and we built what I presented before. Now it's a challenge to work with the new people because they might not have the same mindset as the ones that we worked before. So this is something that we need to see in the future. Maybe we are going to go at your scenario. I hopefully hope we don't go there, where there is no desire for collaboration and co-management. I hope we don't go there because what we have achieved until now is very important and is of major benefit for the MPA.
Thank you. So regarding the communication that you mentioned, you're communicating that you are bringing stability to the park, to the donors, and even if one segment of the MPA, so the Frappa Lore, perhaps the team is changing a little bit, you are the one that are here from, let's say, more years from the beginning.
Yes.
And can really help them in this part. So thank you. And again, I would just like to highlight, we are talking about financing, but I just recall what Tim was saying, that we need to engage people outside the MPAs. They are crucial. And what Asma was saying at the beginning, not only the concept of an MPA engaging a local stakeholder, but relevant stakeholder. We see that sometimes stakeholder can be seen as part of the team.
Yes.
And So communicating is something that is bringing us also financial stability. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Loretta, and thank you very much also, Martina, to raise this point of co-management, because this is also linked with the two presentations that we will have now. I was talking about Karaburun Sazan as the most beautiful marine park. In fact, there is another most beautiful marine park in Mediterranean. It's Kuryat Island, so in Tunisia. So I will now give the floor to two co-managers of these areas. So I think that even your question could be raised to our partners of Tunisia. So we will have hopefully Samia Boufares online from Appel. And we have Ahmed Souki here with us in Montenegro from Tunisian NGO, Notre Grand Bleu. We start with Ahmed. Okay, we start with you, Ahmed. Maybe we should start with the video.
Okay. Vous m'entendez? Je veux présenter en français. Bonjour tout le monde. Alors si vous allez mettre vos casques pour... Ah d'accord. Alors, je me présente, Ahmed Souki, je suis un membre fondateur de l'association Notre Grand Bleu et le vice-président actuel. Je vais tout d'abord vous présenter un petit vidéo qui résume notre travail de cogestion sur les îles Kuryat. On parle des îles Kuryat, ce sont deux petits archipels de îles de superficie 70 hectares pour la petite et 270 hectares pour la grande. Ils sont situés à Monastir. Oui, ouais, thank you. Alors, je vais profiter de l'occasion pour ça, c'est la petite Kuryat. C'est exprès que je choisis le vidéo de 2018 parce que le date de départ de notre convention avec les Medfund et les fonds durables. Alors pour cela, je veux vous expliquer comment il nous faut un financement pour assurer tous les suivis du site. Ça commence par le suivi de l'octobre. On a une équipe qui assure le suivi de l'activité de pêche et des enquêtes avec les pêcheurs et beaucoup d'activités. C'est face-to-face. On parle beaucoup avec eux. On a plus que des milliers d'enquêtes. Suivi de Posidonie aussi. Densité, balisage aussi. C'est le mouillage écologique, installation de mouillage écologique. On a 6 bateliers avec 6 mouillages écologiques de 8 tonnes pour chacun. Les espèces invasives, on a un protocole de suivi mené par nos bénévoles. Sahar maintenant, elle est à Zakynthos, notre membre. Aussi des oiseaux marins. Et bien sûr, notre espèce cible, c'est les tortues marines aux îles Kuryat. C'est le seul site stable de nidification en tortues marines en Tunisie. On a un record pour 2022, on a 51 nids. Les moyens, ça a été avant, avec 2018, des 35, et maintenant, l'année dernière, 42, et pour cette année, 51 nids. C'est comme un record. Alors, les campements scientifiques, on a des bénévoles d'un peu dans le monde, on les intègre
Aussi, la semaine du Grand Bleu, c'est une semaine de formation dédiée aux étudiants et aux gestionnaires des MCP. Ce sont tous des visites de terrain. C'est la cabane de sensibilisation. Elle accueille 5700 visiteurs sur les îles Curiates. L'installation, ce sont des bénévoles internationaux de France, d'Allemagne et de tout. On a eu convention avec l'AISEC. Ça, ce sont les préparations pour l'été et surtout la sensibilisation avec les fils pêcheurs. Et les sentiers sous-marins installés sur Curiates. Alors, je peux m'en parler maintenant. De 2018 à 2022, qu'est-ce qui a changé? Qui a changé la cabane de sensibilisation? On a eu une cabane, c'est grâce à l'FFM, merci beaucoup, qu'on a eu la deuxième cabane de sensibilisation et la capacité d'accueil a augmenté au niveau des membres sensibilisés et au niveau même des visiteurs des îles Curiates avec une restauration sur tous les sites. Alors, à la fois, on a plus de campements scientifiques, surtout pour le média. Maintenant, on travaille plus avec les Instagrammeurs et Instagrammeuses parce qu'ils peuvent cibler beaucoup de demandes. C'est pour cela qu'on a travaillé un campement média avec un campement fils pêcheur, avec un campement scientifique. Et tout ça pour mener un suivi correct et peut-être trouver des solutions, il nous faut un financement. Et pour ce financement, il faut qu'il soit durable. Et c'est assuré par les Medfund avec un financement au niveau de salaire, on est bien, avec les éco-gardes, les coordinateurs et tout. Mais à la fois, pour trouver des solutions, il nous faut un méga projet. Alors, je vais profiter de l'occasion de citer quels sont les types de financement. Pour moi, on a un type classique, les types projets, type de projet durable, type de subvention, c'est ces salaires qu'on les touche. Mais le plus important, il y en a deux autres types, c'est les ressources humaines de chaque association et chaque administration. C'est ça, elle a un coût inestimable si on peut peut-être calculer les coûts. Et un troisième, c'est l'implication de parties prenantes. Et je vais citer des exemples qui sont devant vous aux vidéos. Je prends l'exemple de cormorans écologiques. Les cormorans écologiques, ce sont de 8 tonnes. Pour transporter un plateforme à 20 km, il faut un bon montant, peut-être un grand montant, il faut payer d'un projet. Mais nous, on a fait le contraire. On a créé notre plateforme artisanale, comme M. Robinson. On a installé les cormors sur 2 compartiments, mais c'est ça fait partie d'une réunion dans un café avec tous les parties prenantes, avec les clubs de plongée, avec les pêcheurs et avec les bateliers. Elle était remorquée par un batelier. L'idée est d'un plongeur et un pêcheur qui a trouvé l'idée peut-être d'installer 2 compartiments, de mettre l'un sur l'autre en utilisant les parachutes avec les techniques de plongée. Ça veut dire on peut peut-être gagner beaucoup d'argent en matière de gestion si on implique notre partie prenante. Et à la fois, pour le campement, c'est pour ça que j'ai souligné sur le campement de fils pêcheurs, parce que, et on a à la fois de 2000 jusqu'à 2012, on a aménagé 10 classes écologiques, ce sont tous près au port, là où il y a les enfants de fils pêcheurs. On a 10 classes, 10 clubs écologiques qui sont permanents. Chaque année, il y en a un autre groupe qui va entrer dans ce classe, la classe de CM2, 6e année. Ça veut dire qu'il va trouver toutes les informations nécessaires sur la MCP et sur les tortues et comment les conserver. Alors, on a un message tournant dans la famille des pêcheurs avec les informations qu'on a et avec les activités qu'on mène dans l'école. C'est pour ça, même avec les financements qu'on a, il faut penser vraiment on parle beaucoup de l'économie circulaire, on parle maintenant, mais maintenant, il faut des activités circulaires. quel sera le bienfait sur plusieurs années. C'est pas sur le financement, il s'arrête avec les financements. Si j'installe, par exemple, une sensibilisation fixe dans une classe, je profite de plusieurs générations qui vont profiter de nos informations. Avec les campements de fils pêcheurs, on choisit plus que 50. Elle les emmène au site avec une formation sur la conservation des tortues et tel et tel et tel et tel. Ça donnait un résultat en 2021, les sauvetages des 41 tortues marines par les pêcheurs. On n'a rien fait. Les pêcheurs nous appellent, ils nous emmènent les tortues, après on les transfère au centre de soins, après on les relâche avec une action de sensibilisation. C'est pour cela, vraiment, il veut penser à ça. Pour les ressources humaines de chaque association ou chaque organisme, pour notre Grand Bleu, il a 3 catégories. On a le kids de 8 à 12, de 12 à 18, on a les juniors et on a les seniors, les vieux comme nous, qui dépassent les 18. C'est pour cela qu'il faut trouver un mécanisme de bénévoles dans chaque association, peut-être pour qu'ils puissent gérer tous les membres. Lorsqu'on parle de monitoring de tortues marines, pour assurer le monitoring, il nous faut 10 personnes installées sur site pendant 2 mois et demi, avec tous les logistiques nécessaires. C'est pour cela, peut-être, il faut penser à d'autres solutions qui peuvent peut-être faire l'économie et assurer un suivi durable. Alors, pour conclure, c'est très important d'avoir un financement. C'est très important d'avoir un financement durable. C'est très d'assurer l'équipe de travail et surtout les éco-gardes. Mais le plus important, peut-être, c'est faire l'art de gestion. Et l'amour, j'ai beaucoup entendu de cet atelier de l'amour du site. Si on n'a pas l'amour du site, on perd tous nos valeurs, on ne peut pas poursuivre parce que c'est gênant, c'est fatigant, c'est un engagement, mais à la fois avec cet amour, avec les dynamiques du groupe, avec les différentes catégories d'âge, on s'apprend et nous apprennent à la fois, ils inventent leur idée avec leur volonté, avec notre sagesse, peut-être on peut faire quelque chose. Avec l'échange de genre de ces ateliers, peut-être on peut concrétiser, on peut même échanger, on peut avoir et s'inspirer de nos expériences pour le mieux de notre Méditerranée. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Ahmed, pour cette présentation très claire et inspirante. Est-ce qu'on a Samia Boufares? Non? En ligne avec nous? Non, elle n'est pas là. Bon. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Is there any question for Ahmed here in the room? Maybe one point I want to highlight and maybe referring to the question that you raised on co-management. I think, Ahmed, like you said, is that co-management and the involvement of civil society, it's also a way to involve volunteers and more people on day-to-day management activities of marine protected areas. So there is also, as you say, the love of the area, but when we think about financing, it's also a cost-effective let's say, approach to have more people on board based on the love of the have and the passion of the work you are doing to preserve this ecosystem. So I think that this co-management is not only an administrative way, but it's also a way to involve more people on a voluntary basis. Constance?
Oui, merci. Ça me permet de prolonger ton commentaire, Romain, parce que merci Ahmed pour cette présentation. J'ai eu la chance de visiter les curiates, donc je confirme que ce n'est pas du papier, que c'est vrai. Et je relève aussi l'action que vous avez en faveur des fils et des filles de pêcheurs comme une façon aussi de considérer ces stakeholders, ces parties prenantes de façon plus fine, avec un impact évidemment très intéressant sur ces populations qui sont les fils et les filles de pêcheurs. On peut élargir aussi qu'est-ce que vous faites aussi à l'égard des femmes et de toutes les populations qui sont particulièrement impliquées, vulnérables et concernées. Merci.
C'est vrai que j'ai beaucoup parlé sur le fils pêcheur, mais à la fois la famille pêcheur, soi-disant, on a travaillé sur le pescatourisme. Le pescatourisme, c'est une action pilote avec 5 bateaux de pêcheurs. Ils ont préparé même leur repas sur le bateau. Ils ont monté les filets, ils ont tout hissé sur le bateau. Et à la fois, en essayant d'impliquer les femmes pêcheurs à propos des petites formations sur le nas traditionnel et d'autres sur la cuisine lacunaire et surtout culinaire et surtout le patrimoine naturel, surtout la valorisation des produits maritimes. C'est ça en cours d'études, on va les lancer. Et c'est très important de travailler sur toutes les parties prenantes et surtout avec le face-to-face, si on assure la gestion de personnel de notre Grand Bleu, ça veut dire qu'on soit au continent dans le centre de formation qui est ouvert 7/7, avec la cabane de sensibilisation qui est sur Curiat, peut-être on cible le plus grand nombre de communautés locales et même des visiteurs et les amoureux des îles Curiat. Et à la fois, on pense maintenant, peut-être pour mieux assurer la pérennité de l'association, on va installer notre club de plongée scientifique. Pour ne pas oublier, l'association Notre Grand Bleu gère le site en co-gestion avec la PAL. La PAL représente l'administration et lorsqu'on aura un financement à la société civile en partenariat avec une administration, peut-être on va profiter de l'agilité de la société civile, on va profiter de la motivation, on va profiter même des ressources humaines. Et à la fois, pour tout ce qui est suivi scientifique, l'association Notre Grand Bleu, dans chaque projet, on sort peut-être des PFE, des masters, des PFE et des thèses. Alors, on va aux facultés avec des conventions de partenariat. On présente aux étudiants quelles sont les thématiques qu'ils peuvent profiter. On assure leur déplacement, on assure leur suivi, on les aide et à la fois, ils nous aident à faire reporting, à la fois, ils sont avec nous dans le terrain et ça fait partie plusieurs. On a plus que 60 entre PFE, thèse et master. C'est pour ça, on n'a pas jusqu'à maintenant, je me rappelle plus de signer un chèque d'un contrat d'un expert dans n'importe quelle matière parce qu'on forme nos experts et après, on les laisse aller. Merci.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for your presentation. Sorry, we have to move. Maybe keep your question for the end of this workshop and for the coffee break. So we've heard from those two interesting marine protected areas in the Mediterranean region, Albania and Tunisia. And we have decided also to learn from other seas and other oceans. And we are pleased to have with us in Montenegro, Constance Corbier from FFEM. She will share with us 25 years of experience with the financing of marine protected areas, not only in the Mediterranean region, but worldwide. Welcome, Constance.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Constance Corbier-Barthaud from FFEM, supporting MedPan through different projects since the beginning, I think, and then supporting also MedFund and having a number of projects in Mediterranean, but not only. And yes, thank you. So I will start very quickly. Is it okay? Oops. Yes. So, no, peut-être je peux parler en français puisque ma présentation, sauf là, c'est raté, est en anglais en principe. Bon, okay, so I shift into English when it's in French and vice versa. So this was just to remind what is FFM for those very scarce who do not know what is FFM. Anyway, we are a public fund. We are working since 94. after Rio Summit, and we are supporting projects trying to concile conservation and development in mostly developing countries, and trying to support innovative project, innovation being understood as institutional innovation, such as co-management, for instance, or innovation, technical innovation also, but you have to consider the innovation concept as very wide. So I'm here to speak about, I was very proud of my presentation because it means it's in 3 languages. So be careful, it's not the same language, just there. And this, I have only one, but you can find all the copies, well, you can find all the version on the FFEM website. So you can download whatever you want as a version. So English, French, and Spanish. And I have here one hard copy in French, but if you need, I can collect your name and your postal address and maybe try to send some hard copy, well, if needed. But we are in a no paper meeting, is it? This typically is easier to read when you are on the book, because it's a mapping of the capitalization. So I will speak about 25 years, in fact, 27 years of experiences of FFM supporting something like 40 projects dealing with 200 MPAs all around the world at different moments with different concepts, different ways of supporting that. But here you have kind of idea that it's not only Mediterranean, but it's worldwide. And even though Mediterranean it was, I think, more or less one of the starting point of what we did with the MPAs. So of course, MedPan is there. You can have Mediterranean right in the middle. All kind of projects. So supporting directly MPAs, supporting also networks such as MedPan, but also RAMPAO in the West Africa countries. Supporting also trust funds. I will come back to that, but trust funds working for MPAs at the regional level, such as MedFund, but at the national level, such as PACOMAB for Mauritania or BioGuinea for Guinea-Bissau. The 200 MPAs that have been supported and that are in the framework of this capitalization. You can see, well, in the book, you can read very carefully the name and all the MPAs that have been sampled or studied for this capitalization are here. Just a word on this retour d'expérience. So I shift into French because you have it in English. So just to say, oui, en français donc. Depuis le début, depuis 25 ans, donc on n'a pas gardé la même. Il y a eu des changements de paradigme. On est passé de la mise sous cloche des AMP à un travail plus sur un territoire avec des chartes et des visions plus territorialisées. On est passé du management, de la gestion directement et étatique avec différents types de co-gestion. On est passé à une vision très centrée sur la biodiversité, à une vision plus orientée résilience face aux changements globaux, dont le changement climatique. On est passé aussi à des approches plus, moi j'appelle ça à la papa, tu protèges cette AMP, en échange je te donne un dispensaire ou une école, à vraiment des actions par approche filière de revenus socio-économiques pour les populations les plus impactées. C'est par exemple ce que notre Grand Bleu a présenté sur les filières pescatourisme. Typiquement, c'est une filière autour du tourisme, mais il y en a d'autres. On est passé aussi sur une approche biodiversité vers une approche qui prend en compte les contextes locaux, sociaux, culturels et économiques, donc avec évidemment des systèmes de suivi autour de ces enjeux-là et pas seulement autour des inventaires faune-flore de biodiversité. On est passé à une vision côtière élargie aux enjeux de haute mer, donc dans des zones où il n'y a pas de juridiction nationale, etc. Donc, je passe vite. Je voulais vous donner une présentation. C'est vraiment, je l'ai relu toute la nuit. Et ça se relit, c'est un très beau livre et il y a beaucoup d'enseignements. Donc, j'étais un peu partagée pour savoir qu'est-ce que je tirais pour en parler aujourd'hui, mais je vous invite à le regarder parce qu'en fait, l'idée de ce recueil, c'est déjà d'échanger les expériences, de voir ce qui a marché, pas marché, de voir aussi en fonction des thématiques comment est-ce qu'on peut faire mieux et comment est-ce qu'on peut être un outil d'aide à la décision ou d'aide à la gestion derrière un peu ce retour d'expérience. Et ce travail a été fait, j'ai oublié de le dire, par 2 consultants, mais qui sont partis sur beaucoup d'entretiens, d'interviews, de travail sur les évaluations déjà faites, déjà disponibles. Et donc, un travail vraiment d'extraire la substantifique moelle, le vrai message à travers les différents projets qu'on a pu soutenir et les différents partenaires qui ont pu partager leur expérience. Donc, le rapport, il est construit comme ça, outre le contexte et l'exercice un petit peu de mapping. On a organisé la capitalisation autour de 5 grands chapitres qui sont autant de thèmes qui peuvent être d'intérêt pour partager les expériences. La question de la connaissance et du suivi, ça c'est vraiment un gros bloc. La question de la création des AMP et ensuite de leur gestion et de leur gestion efficace, évidemment. En 3e point, la question de ce qu'on appelle l'économie soutenable ou l'économie bleue. Enfin, il y a tous ces sujets autour du développement socio-économique des populations dans et autour des AMP. Un grand bloc, enfin, qui est nouveau, qui n'était pas si prégnant les 10 dernières années, mais qui est toute la question de la résilience et de la résilience non seulement des écosystèmes, mais des populations qui vivent dans ces espaces. Résilience notamment face au changement climatique ou aux grandes crises. Et la question, et ça sera un point qui a été longuement débattu et qui continuera à faire débat, de la soutenabilité au-delà du temps du projet. Voilà, donc c'est là, je vous montre un petit peu comment un chapitre, par exemple ce chapitre qui est la création et la gestion des AMP est structuré. Donc, on se pose les questions de base et on se donne un défi pour cette capitalisation. Le défi étant de voir quelles sont les bonnes pratiques et comment échanger sur les bonnes pratiques autour d'une gestion efficace. C'est un exemple. Je vais pas passer en revue tous les chapitres. Je voudrais m'arrêter un petit peu sur celui qui nous rassemble aujourd'hui. Comment faire pour être dans une démarche plus soutenable au-delà d'un temps de projet et au-delà d'un revenu qui tombe de façon un petit peu en dents de scie à chaque fois qu'il y a un nouveau projet. Donc, la question, c'est de passer en revue, comme on l'a fait avec Timothée ce matin et avec d'autres orateurs, les différents modes de financement, mais en s'arrêtant sur d'abord sur un préambule qui est la meilleure façon de garantir la pérennité d'une AMP, c'est l'appropriation. C'est donc le fait que les gens eux-mêmes se sentent concernés et ont envie que cette AMP soit effectivement gérée et durable. S'il n'y a pas d'appropriation, si c'est une idée qui vient de l'extérieur, même par un gros bailleur, il n'y a aucune raison que ça dure au-delà du temps d'un projet. Et donc, c'est quand même le premier objectif. Le deuxième étant qu'effectivement, l'appropriation, ça veut dire toutes les parties prenantes, on vient d'en parler, qui sont qui doivent être associées, y compris bien sûr les pêcheurs en premier lieu, puisqu'on parle de ressources marines. Et enfin, on peut regarder effectivement les systèmes de pérennisation à travers différents systèmes. Donc là, j'oubliais aussi de dire que dans ce qu'on appelle les outils liés à une pérennisation de ce qu'on peut faire sur une AMP, il y a le rôle des réseaux. Medpan en est un exemple frappant, le rôle des réseaux pour maintenir cette espèce de momentum autour d'AMP, maintenir aussi la mémoire quand les gens changent, les équipes changent, et puis se faire un petit peu le go-between entre les différents gestionnaires, co-gestionnaires et parties prenantes. Donc les réseaux, le FEFEM en a appuyé plusieurs, donc Medpan est évidemment cité, et le travail de Medpan, j'ai pas besoin de le mettre en valeur. Aujourd'hui, on est là tous pour le contempler, l'admirer et l'applaudir. Donc, mais il y a aussi les enjeux de renforcement de capacité, bien sûr, et tout ça autour de différentes thématiques, en particulier la surveillance. Ça s'apprend, c'est un métier, donc il faut former les gens à la surveillance. C'est pas quelque chose qui, et puis c'est risqué. Il y a aussi les enjeux de sécurité quand on est sur un bateau, donc il y a des formations à la sécurité en mer qui sont fondamentales. Tout ça, c'est un petit peu développé et illustré à partir d'exemples, à chaque fois les exemples de terrain. Sur la façon dont on a présenté les différents appuis qu'on a pu trouver dans les projets. Alors encore une fois, c'est limité aux appuis que le FEFEM a pu apporter à ces fonds de conservation. Les exemples les plus aboutis, les plus anciens historiquement et les plus plein d'enseignements et plein de succès, ce sont les fonds qu'on trouve en Amérique latine. On a la chance d'accompagner Maria José González qui est ici en témoignage de ce que fait son fonds qui s'appelle le MARFUND sur 4 pays côte Pacifique d'Amérique centrale. Donc un fonds un peu comme le MedFund sera dans 5 ans ou dans 10 ans, c'est-à-dire un grand fonds qui appuie toutes les aires marines protégées des 4 pays qui sont membres de ce Trust Fund. On a aussi d'autres exemples, que ça soit Pacifico sur la côte Pacifique, Pacifique centrale, qui s'associe, qui est un trust fund qui s'associe avec une commission des engagements signés par 4 présidents de pays, donc Panama, Costa Rica, Colombie et Équateur, pour qu'il y ait des corridors écologiques entre les AMP depuis les îles Coco et les îles du Panama jusqu'aux Galapagos. Et c'est assez intéressant de voir comment les outils s'emboîtent avec différents moyens. Je suis sur la mauvaise. Voilà, donc j'ai juste une slide pour vous parler un petit peu. Je pouvais tirer des leçons de chaque chapitre. Je pouvais tirer. Alors, dans le chapitre, le document, il est sur. Il présente à la fois des encarts sur des bonnes pratiques qui semblent intéressantes pour d'autres. Donc, il y a des petits encadrés qui racontent ce qu'on fait dans les Kirimbas au Mozambique ou ce qu'on fait aux Comores ou au Curiat, quand c'est vraiment une approche qui peut être originale et éventuellement reprise par d'autres. Il s'intéresse aussi à il y a un chapitre qui s'appelle brainstorming. À la fin de chaque chapitre, il y a une page sur comment carburer, comment faire du remue-ménage, comme on dit en québécois, pour que ça produise plus. C'est-à-dire qu'en fait, c'est un peu pour aller plus loin. On est conscient que cette capitalisation, ça ouvre plus de boîtes que ça enferme, quoi. Et donc là, c'est quelques leçons autour des bonnes pratiques. Donc, l'idée d'abord d'une meilleure connaissance pour une meilleure gestion, on gère mieux. Enfin, d'abord, on aime mieux. J'aime bien l'idée de l'amour du site ou de l'amour du lieu. Donc, quand on aime, on veut mieux connaître. Et quand on connaît mieux, on gère mieux. Donc, je pense qu'il y a une chaîne comme ça qui est importante. Donc, parce que l'idée n'est pas de faire à vie des inventaires de faune et flore. L'idée, c'est de mieux connaître pour mieux gérer. Et on est d'accord que l'un ne va pas sans l'autre. Là, je l'ai déjà dit, engager toutes les populations riveraines concernées, tous les stakeholders, comme on l'a dit tout à l'heure, autour de cette gestion. Réconcilier les enjeux économiques, sociaux, culturels, écologiques. C'est pas si simple, on le dit comme ça, mais c'est pas si simple. Il y a des tensions, surtout quand il n'y a pas beaucoup d'argent ou surtout quand il y a beaucoup d'enjeux autour d'une ressource. Une fois qu'on l'a dit, c'est pas si simple. Donc, non seulement il faut réconcilier, mais il faut mettre en place des petits trucs, des petits comités, des petits moments où on se rencontre. Éviter de voir la MP en isolement de tout le reste du territoire, on l'a dit aussi. Et ne pas hésiter à faire de la restauration quand on a l'impression que la résilience d'une AMP est compromise par une destruction ou un appauvrissement de la biodiversité. Et dans la restauration, promouvoir la régénération, promouvoir les modes de restauration dites écologiques, et diversifier les activités socio-économiques de façon à en trouver qui ne soient pas... il y a toujours des gagnants et des perdants quand on décide d'une AMP. Donc déjà, identifier les perdants le plus tôt possible et trouver des moyens de compenser et ne pas faire un arbre de Noël avec des compensations qui n'arriveront jamais, mais essayer de faire vraiment des compensations pour ceux qui abandonnent certaines sources de revenus, leur en proposer d'autres et les accompagner dans ces nouvelles filières. Et enfin, oui, c'est ça, être toujours créatif, innovant sur les recherches de solutions pour combler les gaps de financement, sachant que le financement, c'est quand même le nerf de la guerre et que au-delà d'un temps de projet, il faut arriver à anticiper et à se projeter sur des besoins sobres mais bien identifiés, et à ce moment-là, on trouvera un financement. J'ai encore slide. Oui, ça c'est pour faire de la pub, c'est pour dire que on arrive à la fin d'un quadriennum, le FEFEM comme le GEF est abondé tous les 4 ans par une ligne qui nous vient du Trésor public français. On arrive au bout de ce quadriennum et donc le prochain, normalement, nous avons garanti que nous serons de nouveau abondés, au moins à part égale à ce qu'on avait jusqu'ici. Mais c'est adossé à une nouvelle stratégie. Et là, j'ai souligné, et la stratégie vient d'être votée la semaine dernière. Donc, je voulais partager avec vous le fait que, comme vous voyez, on est quand même très tranquille pour pouvoir continuer à appuyer les AMP à travers les cases que j'ai un petit peu surlignées. Bon, ok, je vous laisse prendre connaissance de ça. Et je suis à votre disposition pour toute question et plus tard dans les groupes aussi. Merci. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Constance, for this presentation of your 27 years of experiences. Very, very interesting and very interesting document indeed. Any question? Yep. Deux questions. 2 questions at the end, the back of the room, please.
Thank you. Kamel Jed, President of Association pour la sauvegarde du patrimoine écologique et naturel du Gabon, Tunisia. Everybody knows that conservation is in the center of interest of FFEM, and behind of them and behind of FFEM MPAs. But at the end of a project, MPA can find itself without financial support of financial resources. The question is, do you have in FFM a particular strategy to improve the capacity of MPAs to be to have its own financial autonomy? Donc, that's it.
I mean, Andrian, I was represented before from Albania. I want to add in the following question also the let's say the political side. I mean, in case when IMF have restrictions to a country, how you overpass? I mean, following this, I mean, this is
Okay.
especially in countries that you work like Latin America, Albania is in the same case, you know, other countries, I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. For the first question, we have every time FFM is supporting a project, there's a criteria which says that we have to think about the perennity of our subsidy of our grant, even before according the grant. So for us, it's a precondition to discuss on the perennity once the grant is finished, when the grant is spent, to think about the way to have perennity of the actions. Otherwise, the project will not pass the board. So the first answer. The second answer is we do not fund more than 30 to 50% under specific case of the total amount of the project. In a way, it's a kind of guarantee that you do not create a 100% dependency of the grantee towards the grantor. It's not so easy to understand, but I think the idea behind was that. So for an NGO, now it's 50%. So you have to find the other 50%. Second is that, as I said, we are supporting a number of trust funds in order to escape to this 5 years timeline and try to put money where you have only the capital. Well, you have the capital which is blocked, and only the interest of this capital that will provide some money to the different funds. The example of MedFund is very illustrative for that, because at this stage, what you receive from MedFund is not coming from the capital. It's coming from different projects that MedFund is managing, including FFM funds, but not only, Fondation Albert de Monaco, etc. But we hope to have one day enough capital in the trust fund in order to have perennity of a smaller amount of money, but for life. I mean, only interest coming from, well, in the case of MarFund in Latin America, the example I gave, they are able to, well, they have something like 50 million euros or dollars in capital, generating each year something like 2 million euros for grants and for MPAs, the example of MPA, but for life. It means it will not cover 100% of the management cost of an MPA, but it will guarantee, for instance, that you will have always some money to pay the patrol, to pay the different management fee cost. And last, again, through what I said, capacity building and also supporting networks, it's another way to solve this problem of leaving then the MPA alone after 5 years supporting it. So, but I know it's not And then your question, FFM is part of the French system of aide publique au développement, public aid. So we have the same constraints. We can support projects in developing countries, including a number of countries in Mediterranean. We cannot support European countries, for instance. Albania, we have a project with Conservatoire du Littoral and also with the Medfund, but it's not a problem for Albania to submit projects to FFM. We have problem, for instance, in Panama, which is a non-cooperative country, and we have different ways to work with Panama, but without having the money transiting through Panama. So, thank you.
Thank you once again, Constance, for your talk and the support FFM gives to so many projects and MPAs in the Mediterranean region. And not forget, tonight there is also a special event where FFM is involved in the Cogito project. So I think it's at 7 p.m. There is a aperitivo Cogito, aperito, sorry. So maybe we have one last speaker. Thank you very much, Pierre Carré from the Critical Ecosystem Partnership Fund, who is also a very important key player in the Mediterranean region, supporting many NGOs in the Mediterranean region. So the floor is yours, Pierre, and you are the last speaker. So make it like short.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Roma, and hello to everybody.
You are mute. You are mute.
I am. Am I?
No,
Does
now
it
it's
work?
okay. Yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Roma, and hello to everybody. I'm very sorry I cannot be with you in beautiful Montenegro. It would have been fantastic to be with you. And I don't think I will present extensively CEPF. I'm pretty sure most of you already know CEPF, at least if you have been asking for some funding in the recent years. We currently have 150 projects that we support for about $12 million in the Mediterranean basin. And today, Romain and Carole asked me to provide a few lessons learned about financing of marine protected areas and conservation project overall, I think. And so I've been thinking about it in the last few days, how to present the lessons learned. And actually, the more I thought about it, the more I understood that we don't need to reinvent the wheel, and many of the lessons that we can learn from our experience as donors or as project implementers, they are just a mirror of what happens in the ecosystems, in the way natural ecosystems work, in the way evolution of species, of ecosystems has taken place. And I think most of us are biologists in the room, and putting this into perspective with the way ecosystem works might be a nice way to draw lessons. Take the lessons from evolution and the lessons from ecosystem functioning, and try to see how we can take these lessons to financing of our own projects. And when you look at functioning ecosystems, natural ecosystems, one of the first things that really strikes is, of course, diversity. We all know that diverse ecosystems, diverse habitats are more resilient and functions better. And I think it's exactly the same when you consider funding for protected area, a marine protected area, for instance. If you have only one stakeholder on a marine protected area, it's not optimal way of working. If you have a diversity of stakeholders, like a diversity of species in an ecosystem, it works better. And this is something that we see constantly when supporting projects in the Mediterranean basin and elsewhere. The best examples of working marine protected areas are the one where you have civil society organizations, community-based organization, private sector, public authorities, or para-public authorities working together. And of course, all of them work at their different pace. They also have the ability to have access to different sources of funding, which means that at the end of the day, having a diversity of stakeholders working in one place makes more resources available for this protected area. It's a bit like when you see in a natural ecosystem, when you have the sunlight coming, you have the trees taking some of it, and then you have the under canopy, which can also develop, taking the rest of the sunlight. And I think it's exactly the same when you have a diversity of stakeholders working in one place. Of course, it implies sometimes some competition, but we know for sure with the theory of evolution that competition is also a great motor for improvement. But we also know now from more recent research that Darwin was not right on everything, and competition is not everything in terms of evolution, that the cooperation between species is also an important motor for or engine for evolution. And that's also something to take into consideration. And the best example of working marine protected areas and where most funding is made available and used wisely are the ones where you have different stakeholders, in a way with some competition, but also with some cooperation. This also applies to donors, actually, and we see that the diversity of donors is also very important. Not every donor has the same objective. Not all donors have the same way of working. They can work with different type of stakeholders. I mean, and Constance was presenting just before FFEM. FFEM is more dedicated to civil society organization, while AFD, Agence Française de Développement, works more with government, for instance. So the different types of donors are also important, and this diversity is very important as well. And this is something that we have seen in the recent years, also working with MedPan and with the MedFund, that when we see the MedFund being in a position to support the recurrent cost of MPAs, and donors like CEPF being more in a position to support investments and provide a nice push at some different stages in the lifetime of marine protected areas. So that's also very important to consider. So diversity is important. And when I was speaking about having different stakeholders, I think it also reminds me of the way some animals go for hunting. I mean, you see the dolphins, for instance, they very often they hunt in a group. And it's very important to consider this for organization. If you go together to get some funding, you will have more chance. The same way dolphins have more chance to catch fish when they go in a group. And that's the very reason for organizations such as MedPan, for instance, to group and to have networks of organizations that are able to raise their voice together and then be more successful in terms of fundraising. So this is also a lesson that we can draw from some interesting species, even marine species in the Mediterranean basin. Then when you consider evolution, there's an important factor, which is time. And it's very important also to consider time. Not everybody is at the same level. Not every organization is at the same level. And it's the same like with evolution. a bacteria that didn't evolve into a worm and then into something else. I mean, the complexity of organism has taken a lot of time, and it's the same for organizations. You have sometimes to start with small actions, build the credibility of organization, build their financial system so that they can move to another level. Ahmed from Notre Grand Bleu is in the room, and he knows very well that Notre Grand Bleu started with small activities and grow little by little. And 10 years after, I was with Constance in Tunisia for the 10th anniversary of Notre Grand Bleu in July. And you see where an organization can go and going step by step. It's also something that sometimes donors, including ourselves, have difficulties to apprehend, because we have objectives. We have objectives with a precise time frame. We would like to get results after 5 years, 3 years, 2 years sometimes. And this considering the importance of going step by step and taking the time to reach the results is something that is very important as well. There's a last thing which is also important, I think, to consider is in evolution, death is an important factor. It's not always nice to speak about it, but from time to time you have organization that will die, and we know it. It's just the normal evolution, and we have to consider that. It's not necessarily negative. The death of an organization can lead to something else and something different, maybe better adapted to the situation. And this is something that everybody has to, in a way, accept. And I have learned this lesson on many occasions with CEPF as well. And we see that happening all the time in different hotspots. So not to lose this of sight as well. And that's about my small lessons learned with this comparison with evolution and natural life. I'm very happy to continue the discussion with you now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pierre. You are getting wiser and wiser with the time. So we miss you. We miss you here. Any comments and any remarks following Pierre's inputs? Or maybe we can move to the end of this meeting. So maybe before giving the floor to Carol to link what we have just said with a policy recommendation of the MedPan, I have highlighted a few elements that you share today with us. Keywords. Pierre talk about diversity. I think this is one key word that you mentioned today. It's the diversity of funding. So what we need is not a magical tool, but more a toolbox with many different tools inside. And depending on the context, or even depending on the time, then you can pick different tools. So I think that MedPan as a network is a very good position to design this toolbox, putting together our experiences from different marine protected areas and having maybe something dedicated to funding mechanism, maybe in the website or a place where managers could find some best practices and example of funding schemes or funding mechanism. Then another word that you shared this morning and this afternoon is sustainability and long-term funding. So this is also key. You mentioned that if you want to be effective in your MPA, you don't have to spend your all day chasing for new project or hunting, like you said, Pierre, hunting for new projects. You need some stability. You need some vision to be able to dedicate time to really manage the day-to-day activity on the field and not spend your whole day in the office having Excel sheet to fulfill. Then we talk also a lot about the carrying capacity and how we need to find a balance between I would say, using the tourism as a source of revenues, but also bearing in mind that we need to preserve a natural ecosystem. And this is the main goal of the marine protected areas. So how to deal with this issue? I guess that, and I think that you mentioned that this morning, that the next, or yesterday, the next workshop, MedPan Regional Exchange workshop will be about tourism. I think that carrying capacity should be like, it should be tourism / natural habitat / carrying capacity, because MPA are not designed to attract tourists, right? This is not the overall goal of MPAs. So we have to be clear on that and to exchange on this topic. Then you talk about the legal framework, the importance of having a legal framework. Timothée, you mentioned that this morning, that we can have many examples such as visitor fee, concession fees, and so on. And for example, in Albania, now you have also a new framework, but you need a legal basis to implement such mechanism. So this is also something we should highlight in the policy paper or in the roadmap. Then we talk about co-management and how co-management could be really an effective way of protecting natural habitats, because it combines the agility of local NGO with the stability of national organization, or opposite, the stability of local NGO and agility of national organization, depending on the context. And then, of course, in every MedPan session, we talk about love. We talk about passion of our marine parks. So I think this is a good, also an important keyword to keep in mind for the rest of the week. So I will give the floor to Carol, maybe for the last comments on that. And thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, Romain. It's not totally a final comments. It's just a reminder of what we discussed this morning with Pierre. As he fairly underlined, this workshop has been built up taking advantage of the framework we have currently with the roadmap. And we just wanted to share with you what is already existing in the roadmap when it comes to this key question of fundings, in order to make sure that it's still in line with what you need, what you think, and how we could go further. So as you can see on this slide, we have been already tackling in the roadmap the question of the national funding, the fact that we do need first to know how much we need, what are the funding gaps. We address as well the question of the sustainable funding, fairly underlined by Constance and Pierre, and the need to create and to support mechanisms that are enabling to support in the medium and long-term MPAs, the question of strategies, the need, and we heard this morning a very interesting example from Egypt, the need to have a business plan, and the finance capacity, how we can train better our community of practice, including MPA managers. So as you can see, we already try to capture the different key building blocks around this question of funding and sustainable funding of MPAs. But what I would like to ask you is, do you see any other, I would say, area of work that we should further investigate and work on? We have done our exercise from our side with a policy paper, but I won't disclose it yet. I would like to get first your feedback. Do you see something missing already in the strategic recommendation of the roadmap that we should analyze better? Mm-hmm. So the legal framework, good point. Yes?
You need the mic, because otherwise I don't see the
I mean, should be also kind of competition, like the indicators which show the best case of the best country, and also how the others, I mean, could replicate or keep it, so that this is also pressure also to the governments. I mean, like the best case application, I mean, should follow.
So you would like to foster emulation between countries, being inspired by very good and successful examples, right?
Exactly. It's also what the last colleague mentioned. I mean, this diversity. I mean, the diversity comes also with counting indicators and looking the result behind them.
Yeah, good. I really like the comment from Pierre, how to combine competition and cooperation is something that we have been reflecting a lot with colleagues through the Global Isle Partnership, and they combine this in order to illustrate how emulation works between countries, and they conclude with competition. So a nice mix of the two. Yes, Pierre, please.
I mean, I would like to make a suggestion, but I know that it's something that is elsewhere in the MedPan strategy and as well for the Med Fund, and it's something that we shall maybe also address all together, is to ensure that we raise the profile of Mediterranean MPAs and attract new donors, new sources of funding for the MPAs. I don't know if you are aware that the MAVA Foundation is closing. That's very clear, and it's there will be a gap in the coming years in terms of at least in terms of private or philanthropy financing for MPAs in the region. So there's really a need to raise the profile and go convince other donors to put their assets in this very important topic.
Thank you, Pierre. I think Marie will directly address your comment.
Yeah, just to mention something, and I guess on Wednesday or tomorrow afternoon, we will have a session on different networks. I agree with you, Pierre, that we have to attract donors in the Mediterranean, not only for MPA, but for protection of nature in general, some new, especially private funds, but also public funds. We were discussing with the Med Fund based on the JEF project. Maybe in the future, we can build a green climate fund project, maybe. And just to mention that also what we see as a real added value at MedPan is also to be connected with other networks of MPA managers outside the Mediterranean, also to attract donors to really take into account the need to invest on MPA management and to really show and then convince to create new MPAs, but to really convince to invest on MPA management. So there is this global coordination of networks of MPA managers at world level, started at transatlantic level. Now we are connecting with the new network in Western Indian Ocean that is quite emerging. 2 weeks ago, we were in Southeast Asia, exchanging with a NEAMPAN, Northeast Asia, and also the Coral Triangle. So I guess there is this big connection. Another layer is about the connection we have MedPan with the Med Fund. And we have now this key complementarity, because when we talk about the post-2020 target, it's really about effective management, the challenge effective management of MPA beyond the figures, and also the sustainable financing, as we say today. And maybe just to mention that there is now this global alliance, let's say, established and initiated in particular by the Med Fund and MedPan, but also with other networks of MPA managers and other conservation trust funds beyond the Mediterranean. So for me, I agree with you to attract donors in the Med, and we have also to keep in mind to attract donors to invest on MPA management and sustainable financing. So this link between trust funds, networks of trust funds like Red Lake, like CAFE, networks of MPA managers is really a value here.
Definitely. Is there any comments or suggestions regarding what we have already in hands in terms of key recommendation? No. Maybe I would like to invite Timothy. I know it's your colleague Fernando who is more working on this, but we just touched this point regarding the climate finance. And we make more and more the connection between marine conservation, MPAs, and the climate negotiation. You know, this year there was the UN Ocean Conference, and the key topic is how we can take advantage again of the COP climate that will happen in Egypt to really again raise the profile of the importance of the marine conservation and sustainable activities at sea. So it's something that is not so often discussed in our community, maybe because we don't have yet fully all the tools in hands to actually see how we could access better to this climate finance. But the question of the blue carbon is already creating a lot of debate. So maybe, Timothy, you could say a few words. I challenge you, sorry.
Thanks for challenging me. That feels like a trap. So as I mentioned earlier, for those who were here this morning, we have someone at Blue Seeds, Fernando Ruiz, who's working on developing, I wouldn't call this a methodology, but at least some mechanism that will allow co-financing of eco-moorings that will protect Posidonia through blue carbon financing mechanism. And so far, the results are ambiguous. The results are not clear-cut. I know there's been a lot of people talking about this pot of gold we are all sitting on. So everybody is excited with their Posidonia and their MPA and is measuring how much carbon do I have equals how many dollars credits carbon do I have sitting in my MPA. The answer is that actually we still don't know. And, you know, this comes from someone who's from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Fernando, who's working with the university, the CEAB in Spain. And currently there is lots of more research to be done. We basically just don't know how much carbon is out there. We just don't know how much carbon is lost to anchorage. What is the amount lost that is needed to actually have an operational funding mechanism, and with which level of which price of per carbon, dollars per carbon, ton of carbon. So the conclusion today is that there is no conclusion, I'm afraid to say. It could go either way, depending on what the research unveils and depending on how the market moves. But I really wouldn't advise counting exclusively on that mechanism. Again, it's just another type of revenue amongst others that managers should think about. And to answer your question, yes, we should definitely discuss the possibility of expanding the research, having more means and more pilot sites to do that level of research which is needed before we can conclude. For sure, if this is something that we can use and expand, scale up on. Yeah, that's the answer.
Good. Thank you for your frankness. Maybe something that through our different connection, we could put on the table of the negotiation, because in any case, it will be decided by the countries who are part of the United Nations Convention on Climate Change, because currently the different mechanisms are not allowed to really capitalize on what the marine ecosystem can offer. So it may be something to think about in order to try to to adjust to something that is not actually suitable for marine and coastal ecosystem. So maybe engaging countries to think about a new mechanism under UNFCCC regarding marine and coastal ecosystem could be a way in order to be fair about the reality, not trying to raise too much expectation that may fail at the end of the day. So what I could do quickly, it's over, is just to invite you to read the MedPAN policy paper, because actually we have already declined and specified, translated all the strategic recommendation into a lot more. If this wants to go away, where do you block it, Roma, maybe? Does it work? Can you pass it to the next slide? Voila, thank you. So I invite you to read it, because we already actually addressed some and kinds of suggestions, particularly regarding the legal frameworks. So please have a look. The documents will be on our website, and please feel free to contact us to suggest any changes or any additional recommendation. As I said this morning, this is a living document and it is your document. We will work for its implementation. So please share your insight. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thomas.
Just 2 words, coffee break. Downstairs. Thank you all. If you come back, if you want to come back, you're welcome to come back, but I won't be here. I think that the next workshop will be 4:30, right? But it's here, Marie? I don't know, actually. Okay, 3 parallel workshop.